Sup folks, welcome to the part 5, of What If Deku Run an Orphanage, Chapter 24. Oh, see rule. Nope, like Chapter 16 I'll skip it. Chapter 25. Friendly faces. So I want to reveal the inspirations for not just the characters from the last chapter, but all my OCSND.O.C. The OPCCC Nami didn't really have any inspiration. She was meant to be a generic government agent that only made one appearance and never showed up again, but I was having trouble coming up with a name for her. Eventually, I gave up and literally named her Lazy Name as a joke. Then I decided to model her personality off of that. D.O.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C.C. Deku got custody over Eri rather than literally anyone else. However, this was such a good explanation that I decided to increase their role in the story significantly. The reason for their original stupid name is the same reason as Nemi. I got frustrated and gave up. Quirk is obviously based off of Medusa. Most of her favorite foods are things that snakes enjoy eating. Kiba is obviously based on a vampire. Her overdramatic personality comes from the way I like to parody overly serious overdramatic vampires. Her love of foods with the color red added to them is a reference to Marceline from Adventure Time. Sans and I was watching YouTube one day and one of the YouTubers had a slime girl in their intro. I said, boy, slime girls are cute, I want one in my story. However, a slime girl wasn't really all that inherently dangerous. So I turned her slime to acid and tada. Sanson was born. Kyaku came into existence while I was brainstorming ideas for more kids. She has no real inspiration, but I just liked the idea of a little girl breaking into Izuku's house and trying to forcibly join the family. So when I was writing this story, a lot of people thought I got inspiration from Monster Musume. I did not. I did watch Monster Musume, but that was a long time ago, so it never came to mind until you guys started talking about. However, after you brought it up, I decided to look there for more inspiration for the children, and I really liked the idea of having a spider girl in the story. Funny thing though, the number of her eyes and the way they're placed are actually based off of Muffet from Undertale. Yami, say what you want about RWBY. But it has some really cool ideas and designs. The Grimm in particular are really, really cool. I'd been wanting to have a story about Izuku with a Grimm spawning, controlling Quirk, but I didn't have the time. So I made Yami. Why did I make Yami a boy instead of Lily Salem? Because I needed to even out the male to female ratio. Yeah, I'm just gonna be blunt here. This whole story is kind of a byproduct of my own desire to protect and spoil my younger sister, whom I unfortunately rarely ever see, so I tend to make more of the kids girls as a result of that. Kai, despite what people may think, Kai was not really based off of King Ghidorah. He's just a basic Hydra with wings. I really just wanted a giant monster kid, but MHA already has a Godzilla ripoff and a dragon, so I had to get creative. I was originally gonna give him some kind of breath attack, but I thought that might be a bit too OP, so I gave him poison blood to match the Hydra theme. Ataku is based on Marvel's Man-Thing. Not much else to it. Fukanoko is based on two characters. Her quirk is obviously based off of Scarecrow. But her appearance and personality are heavily based on Bernadetta from Fire Emblem Three Houses. Why Bernadetta? Because 1, I love modern Fire Emblem. Nothing against the old games, old as in pre-awakening, just not my thing. In fact, the only other fic I ever published that was not an MHA fic was a Fire Emblem Fates fanfic ... which I later deleted because oh my god, the cringe. Most of my early works were just ... so bad. And secondly, Bernadetta is my favorite Fire Emblem character as well as one of my favorite fictional characters in general. Now you might ask, why would I give a Bernadetta character a fear gas quirk instead of a quirk based off of one of Bernadetta's actual abilities? Well, I tried that but I couldn't think of anything, so I gave her fear gas because I was going to make a fear gas character anyway, and having a fear-based power seems fitting for a Bernadette-like character. Also, her name is the most intricate I've ever gotten with a character name. Anyway, on to the story. This chapter is dedicated to Fukinoko. The next chapter will be dedicated to the other two. Too shy. Too sweet. Fuku was trembling as she stood in front of her door. Come on Fuku. If you don't ask Izuku for food then you'll starve. Fuku tried to gather up all her courage as her hand hovered over the button to open the door. You can do it Fuku. Be brave. For food. She held her breath, and pressed the button, causing the door to slide open. And reveal Iri on the other side. Fuku immediately jumped backwards into her bed and screamed. Ah! Iri let out a much quieter surprised scream and jumped back a more reasonable distance. Fuku covered herself in her blankets in a poor attempt to hide herself. Please don't kill me. Kill you? Iri stuttered. I don't want to kill you. I promise. So you want to torture me? Fuku accused. Beat me until my skin turns black and blue. Break my bones. And turn me into a bloody pulp. What? No. Tears started forming in Iri's eyes. I just wanted to give you a candy apple Huh? Fuku peeked her head out of the covers. In front of her was Iri, close to crying and with 2 candy apples in her hand. Iri sniffed as she tried to hold in the tears. I'm sorry. Immediately guilt stabbed Fuku right in the heart and she started to panic. Oh God, I'm sorry. Fuku apologized. Please don't cry. After a couple minutes the two of them managed to calm themselves down to well, not a reasonable level but to the point where they could talk without crying. I wanted to give you this. Iri held out the candy apple to Fuku. An apple? Fuku took the treat. Why does it look weird? Is it poison? No. Iri shook her head. It's a candy apple. They look different from normal apples. They're sweet. Candy? I've never had candy before. Fuku admitted. That man never let me have any. He said it'd make me get fat and unhealthy. Izuku says that only happens if you eat too many, Iri said. He said it's okay to have some but not too much. Fuku looked at the apple, and then at Iri. She said it's not poison. But what if she's lying? But she might get upset if I don't eat it. Oh God, she might stab me with that horn. Concerned with offending the girl, Fuku took a hesitant bite. And that's when her entire world changed. Fuku's eyes widened and her pupils dilated as the sweetness made its way to her tongue and made her brain go crazy. And in that moment, only one thought dominated her mind. Only one word. More. She immediately took a much bigger bite of the apple, stuffing her face and getting some on her cheeks. Is good. Fuku said with her mouth full. Why yeah. Iri gave a very slight smile, relieved that the other girl was enjoying the treat. Iri didn't even have time to start eating her apple before Fuku finished hers. MHMM. Fuku finished swallowing the candy. That was the best thing I've ever eaten. Iri nodded. It's my favorite. I thought you might like it. I did. Thank you. Fuku said, her eyes shining. Thank you. Sorry I never asked your name. You gave me candy and I never even asked you your name. I'm so sorry. It's okay. My name's Iri. Iri introduced herself. Thank you, Iri, Fuku told her. For a while, the two of them just stood or sat in Fuku's case, in silence. However, Iri noticed that Fuku wasn't really looking at her, but rather at her candy apple. Iri brought the apple towards Fuku, offering it to her. For me? Fuku asked, shocked by her generosity. Iri nodded, bringing the apple closer to her. But I can't. Fuku shook her hands in front of her to deny her offer. I already had one and I didn't. I can't take your apple from you. It's okay, Iri reassured her. I've had a lot ever since I met Izuku. But that was your first. I think it's more fair if I give you two. I mean, I guess that makes sense. Fuka was still unsure. But are you sure? Didn't you say that it was your favorite? Iri nodded. I love it but ... I want you to smile more. Fuka felt something. Something deep inside her. She felt ... touched. And no one's ever said that to me before, Fuka whispered. She looked down at the apple, and, very slowly, she took it from Iri's hand. Fuka took a small bite of the apple. And chewed it. After she swallowed it, she just sat there looking at it for a couple minutes, making Iri concerned. However, eventually Fuku broke the silence. Why did you bring this to me? She asked Iri, looking away from the girl with shame in their eyes. Why are you being so nice to me? Fuku doesn't deserve it. I'm stupid and ugly and my quirk is ... It's terrible. It's more like a curse than a quirk. In that moment, Iri got a very bad flashback to when she first met Izuku. Back when she was just like Fuku. Iri climbed onto the bed, startling Fuku. What are you? Before Fuku could finish her sentence, she was suddenly wrapped in a hug from Iri. Huh? Don't ever say that, Iri whispered, holding Fuku tightly. You're not a monster. And your quirk is not cursed. Wabatai Fuku wasn't used to hugs. Wasn't used to the warmth that came from hugging. Wasn't used to the strange fluffy feeling that came from being given affection. So she started crying. And then Iri started crying. Did someone hurt you? Iri asked her. Hurt me? Fuku sniffled. Did your parents hate you too? Iri asked her. You were trapped in a place where everyone hated you? And a bad man hurt you over and over. Did he call you bad things too? Did he call your quirk a curse too? Fuku struggled out of Iri's grasp and looked at her fearfully. How did you know? Because Izuku said that you're like me, Iri said. Like you? Fuku said with a small amount of disbelief. Iri nodded. Before I met Izuku, I was in a bad place. A bad man kept me there and hurt me a lot. He called me mean things and said my quirk was a curse. That I was a cursed child who could only hurt people. That happened to me too. Fuku's eagerness lasted only a few seconds before she got gloomy from remembering her past. Why, you can talk about it. Iri urged her. I heard about you from Izuku, and everyone said you were too scared to leave your room. I wanted to tell you that it was safe here. So if you want to talk you can. No one's going to get mad. I promise. Pinky promise? Fuku held out her pinky. Iri didn't know but she just went along with it, wrapping her pinky around Fuku's pinky. Pinky promise. There was a small pause before Fuku started to talk. Father wanted me to be a boy before I was born. But when I was born a girl he was angry. He named me, Child of Misfortune. Fuku explained. He said that he wanted me to be the perfect bride so that he could marry me to a rich family. He forced me to learn a lot of things like cooking and cleaning and sewing. And every time I failed he would hit me and call me a failure. He'd tie me to a chair and challenge me to keep still. And when my quirk came everything got worse. He said that I was unmarriable. A complete failure. After that, he locked me in my room so I didn't hurt anyone with my quirk, until the men in suits took us away. Fuku has started crying at some point during her explanation. Iri did not really understand all the complicated parts like why her father wanted a boy, or why she had to be a bride and marry a rich family. But she did understand that someone had hurt Fuku, and that's all she really needed to understand right now. He was a bad man, Iri said. Like overhaul, people like them lie and hurt people because they're selfish. Why you shouldn't listen to them. Iri was doing her best. Telling her everything that Izuku told her. She just wanted to be there for her. Why you really think Fuku isn't bad? Fuku sniffled. Iri nodded. If you're bad, then that means I'm bad. And Izuku says I'm not bad, so you're not bad either. It was simple, childish logic. But they were simply children. So it did succeed in making Fuku feel better. Why you're a good person, Iri. Fuka wasn't sure she was ready to fully trust Yuri, but she did trust her more than anyone else right now. "There are a lot of good people here," Yuri said. "They're different from us. Some are loud. Some are weird. Some are scary. But they're really nice. Why, you should meet them ... if you want." Fuku paused. I don't think I'm ready for that. Fuku's too much of a coward ... but maybe one day I can go and meet them. I don't think I can do it alone though. I'll help." Yuri immediately volunteered. And she would. She'd be there for her. Just like Izuku and the others would be there for her. Knock knock. Fuka was currently doing her new favorite activity. Enjoying some sweats and tea in the comfort of her room while watching some romance anime. "No. Confess. If you don't, she's gonna leave for America," Fuka shouted at the TV screen. Knock knock EAP. Fuka jumped in her seat, before scrambling for the remote and turning off the TV. "Fukinoko?" called from the other side of the door. "Can I come in?" "Ah. Who are you? How do you know my name?" Fuka panicked. "My name's K. I'm one of the other kids here. I asked Dad for your name," K explained. Oh. Fuka breathed a sigh of relief. It didn't seem like the girl was an assassin out to kill her, but then again, she didn't know that for sure. "Can I come in?" K asked. "I want to snake your hand." Huh? Fuka got confused for a moment. Do you mean shake? Or ... don't tell me. You're gonna have a snake bite my hand. Wano. K immediately denied. "I have snakes for hair, so I was making a snake pun." "You have snakes for hair?" Fuku asked. Surprisingly, this didn't freak her out further. "Yeah. They are really nice. Want to pet them?" K asked. Fuku could hear K's snakes hiss. Fuku thought about it for a second before realizing she would have to let Kin to do that and shaking her head. "And no. Please, go." "Huh? But I want to meet you." K whined. "I came here so we could have fun. I'm having fun. Lots of fun. Inside my room," Fuku said. "But aren't you lonely in there by yourself?" K asked her with a somewhat sad tone. There was a small pause before Fuku responded. "And no? I don't believe you," K said. "Come on. Please. We can do whatever you want." "Whatever I want?" Fuku asked. "Whatever you want," K repeated. There was another pause until Fuku responded with, "Can we do something with the door still closed?" It sounded ridiculous. To anyone who wasn't there, they might have thought it was just a rude, sarcastic way of telling the snake girl to leave. But her hopeful, yet somewhat desperate tone said otherwise. There was yet another long, awkward pause as Fuku got more and more nervous. I'm sorry. It was a stupid question." Fuku broke down and apologized. "There's no way you could do something with this door between knock knock." "Knock knock," K said after knocking on the door. Huh? Fuku stopped her crying and apologizing. "Knock knock," K repeated. Fuku paused for a moment out of confusion, before realizing what this was. It was a knock-knock joke. Out of curiosity, Fuku responded. "Who's there?" "Nobel," K responded. "Nobel who?" Fuku asked. "Nobel, that's why I knocked." K giggled. Fuku thought about it for a while, not really getting the joke at first. Nobel ... Nobel ... Nobel. Oh. She finally got it. That's funny. She didn't laugh. Or smile. But she was amused. No laugh. "Darn," K said. "Your turn." What? Fuku asked. "You wanted to do something with the door between us. So let's play a game," K explained. "We'll tell knock-knock jokes until one of us laughs. The first one to laugh wins ... But you have to laugh at the other person's joke. My laugh earlier didn't count. But I'm terrible at jokes," Fuku objected. "Everyone says I'm pretty bad at it too. So we're even," K explained. Fuku's mouth opened and closed as she tried to figure out what to say. She can't do anything to me from behind the door, right? Wait. Everyone here has dangerous quirks. What if she's just trying to make me feel safe before breaking down my door and killing me? Fuku thought. But why wouldn't she just do that from the beginning? Does she want to make me feel safe so my death hurts, emotionally too? Fuku's paranoid thoughts continued to dominate her mind for the next several seconds. However, despite everything in her mind telling her not to do this, her trembling little hand reached for the door. Knock knock. Knock knock, Fuku whispered. Smiled on the other side of the door. Who's there? Fuku blushed with embarrassment. She forgot to actually think of a joke. First see cows go? Cows go who? Asked. No. Cows go moo. Fuku responded. Fuku gave an awkward, forced laugh. Oh my god, that was so bad she's going to hate me now. There was yet another pause before Fuku eventually heard snort. And then giggle. And then laugh. Started just laughing out loud. Ha 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 ha. Darn it. That was so good. What? Fuku was confused. Did I just win? Yup, said, still giggling at the pun. Want to play again? Fuku still hasn't gotten over the fact that she actually won something. I won? But I can't win. Fuku's no good. Fuku's the worst at everything. That's not true. Objected. You're the best at being you. The best at being Fuku? Fuku questioned. But that doesn't mean anything. Fuku's the worst at everything, so being the best at being Fuku means being the worst at everything. But you can't be the worst at everything if you are the best at being yourself. Argued. That huh? You could almost see the steam coming out of Fuku's head as her brain tried to figure out and counter's logic or lack thereof. After a few moments of speechlessness, K repeated her question. You want to play again? Dazed from her overthinking, Fuku just said. Sure? Okay. Knock knock. K knocked on the door. Who's there? Fuku asked. Annie. K said. Annie who? Fuku asked. Anything I can do you can do too. K snickered. Huh? Oh, I get it. Fuku got the joke much quicker this time. That apostrophe s not true. But it was funny. I guess. Your turn. Told her. Oh okay. Fuku knocked on the door. Knock knock. Who's there? Asked. To, Fuku said quickly, coming up with something. To who? Asked. Actually it's to whom. Fuku smiled nervously. There was a small pause before K said. I don't get it. Oh, when you say to who, grammatically the correct way to say it is to whom. Fuku explained. It was a bad grammar joke. Sorry. Oh. I didn't know that. You're smart, Fukinoko. K praised. Stop praising me so much. Fuku's face was beet red. But you are. K insisted. Stop. It's your turn, just go. Fuku told her. Okay, knock knock. K knocked on the door. Who's there? Fuku asked. K said. Who? Fuku asked. Bless you. K giggled. Once again it took Fuku a second for her to get it. But when she did, she actually smiled a little, and giggled, very slightly. Ah. You laughed. Pointed out. Huh? I did? Fuku just realized what happened and her eyes went wide. Oh, I did. Stupid Fuku. I didn't even try to hold it in. Hey, don't be sad. You won the first game, so we're tied. K said. Besides, Dad says that losing isn't a bad thing, as long as you have fun? Fuku thought about the question. She laughed. She can't remember the last time someone made her laugh. She liked laughing. It made her feel good. In a way hard for her to describe. I guess, Fuku admitted. Do you want to play again? Okay. K knocked on the door. Knock knock. Who's there? Fuku asked. Olive was already giggling. Olive who? Fuku asked. Olive you. Burst out laughing, with the biggest smile on her face. Olive you? Olive. Oh live? Oh, live? I live? I love? I love yo. Fuku's face erupted in a bright red blush. And she got so flustered that she accidentally activated her quirk and gas filled the room. So yeah, Fuku's not quite out of her shell yet, but it's progress. And much faster than Bernadetta. Probably because she's not being sent to kill bandits and being taught how to kill people. Anyways, she was the most in need of attention, so I gave her her own chapter. Also, I wanted to give Eri some spotlight. She's shy, so it's hard to give her as much attention as the others sometimes. Chapter 26. Shorts 7 Spa Rack. Kai roars as one of his heads rushes towards Kiba. Kiba dodged the attack, jumping onto the side of a nearby small mountain, causing Kai's head to get stuck in the dirt. Luckily he had two more. One of the heads picked up a tree and threw it at Kiba, who in response picked up a rock and threw it at the tree at full strength. The force of the rock was so great it split through the tree like a bullet, cutting it in half and keeping it from harming her. The rock hit Kai, smashing against his scaly skin. Ow! That stings. Kai shook off the sting and finally pulled out his middle head from the ground. Clever move, dear sister. But allow me to retaliate. Meanwhile, on the side, Fu was filming the entire thing and keeping watch of chat. Holy crap, this amazing. Isn't this dangerous? Is this even legal? To explain. Kiba had found out that Kai also wanted to be a hero. There weren't exactly many jobs one could have for an enormous person who couldn't shrink, and he was willing to spar with her. And so after asking permission for Izuku to go into the forest to spar, Izuku said yes on the condition that Fu accompanies them and that Kiba streamed the whole thing. Conditions Kiba was more than happy to oblige. Dad owns all the land around here, so we can use our quirks as much as we want, Fu explained. While he was explaining this, Kiba uppercut one of Kai's heads. However, this left her in the air, completely defenseless. Fortunately for her, the pain from the uppercut caused Kai to stumble back. And by the time he recovered, he missed his chance to attack back. Kiba landed on the ground and decided to keep on the offensive. She ran toward Kai and did a jump kick, hitting him right in the belly. However, the distance she ran was too short, meaning she didn't build up enough momentum to do sufficient damage to Kai. Meaning she just bounced off. Kai stomped the ground, causing it to shake. Oath. Kiba lost her footing and fell to the ground. Kai saw this opportunity and raised its foot, before bringing it down on Kiba. Not too hard, just in case she couldn't handle it. Kiba could in fact handle it, however, and she used all four limbs to push against Kai's foot. Kai increased the power of his stomp, but Kiba was at full strength and was able to handle it. The ground below her could not, however. And Kiba was forced underground, unable to repel Kai's foot due to his strength and size. Is the great Kiba done for? Impossible. Kiba is supreme. My dude, she's fighting a Hydra. I'm impressed she lasted this long. Rise Kiba. Rise. I don't think rising is the key here, Fu said. Are you ready to give up, dear sister? It looks as if you've been bested, Kai said. Suddenly, Kai sunk deeper into the ground. And he felt Kiba's resistance against his foot vanish. Huh? Sister? Kai panicked, thinking he may have crushed her, and he raised his foot and lowered his head towards the hole to check on her. He couldn't see anything in the dark hole, so he brought his head closer, putting one of them in the hole, and found that Kiba was simply not there. Suddenly, Kiba burst out from the ground behind Kai. Surprise! Kiba jumped onto Kai's back and started climbing his back and punching him. There she is. Kiba used dig. Ah! Clever trick, Ga! Sister! Kai praised. And right where my head can't reach. However, Kai fell on his back, squishing Kiba between his back and the ground. Ah! Kiba cried in pain, before quickly gritting her teeth and getting her head back into the fight. She let go of Kai and dug into the ground, digging through it quickly with her massive strength. Kai got up after realizing this and moved its 3 heads around it, giving it almost 360 vision. Kiba popped out of the ground, but this time Kai was ready and grabbed her in his mouth. Kiba used her strength and kept his jaw open, while also punching the roof of his mouth. Ow! 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 Kai cried out with his other heads. He thought quickly and took into the sky. After getting a few miles into the air, Kai stopped. "Sister, do you think you can take a fall from this height?" "Can I?" "Ha!" Kiba scoffed. "With ease, brother." "Very well." Kai raised the head Kiba was in, before flinging it down and spitting out Kiba. Kiba underestimated how terrifying it would be to fall from so high up. Pum! Kiba hit the ground hard, making a big cloud of dirt. "Oh, crap. Gay Kiba? That looked bad." "Fu. That's enough." Fu looked at the username of that last person. AllMightFan2033. aka, Izuku. Kai landed and Fu blew a whistle he brought along. "That's enough. Dad's calling it off," Fu announced. Kai nodded. "Yes, brother." "And no." Kiba cried from within the dust cloud. The dust started to clear, and Kiba was trying to stand up in a small crater. Scratches and bruises covered her body. Her dress was messy and torn, albeit not as much as you'd think it'd be thanks to the spider silk. She was trying to stand up, but it was clear that impact had hurt a lot. She could, after a few seconds of recovery, still fight. But Izuku, who had been watching Kiba's stream, still decided enough was enough. "Kiba. Know your limits." "Wait, is that her dad?" "I think it is." "Dad still says to call off the fight," Fu told her. "TCH." Kiba grimaced. Fine. You did very well, sister. I've never been injured like this before." Kai praised her. "Well, next time prepare for a beating that trumps this one thoroughly," Kiba swore. Kiba is such a sore loser. She's an adorable loser. Kiba did not lose. She simply failed to win. Fu actually cracked up a little bit on that last one. Yeah, I'm sure that'd make her feel better. Kai picked up Kiba and Fu with his heads, and pulled them onto his back, before flying back to the house. New room. Kai stood in his enormous room with wonder in his eyes. The room was right next to the backyard and was nearly as big as the main house itself, with the ceiling being a comfortable distance from Kai's head. The floor was soft, comfortable enough to sleep on, yet still firm. There was a TV screen that was roughly the size of one of the regular rooms, and next to it was a control panel that acted as the remote. "Sorry I couldn't get you a bed," Izuku told him as he introduced Kai to his new room. "And sorry if the TV might be a bit small." No, it's great, father. This room is far greater than the one at the facility," Kai said in awe. "And the TV is much bigger." "Oh, well, I'm glad you like it." Izuku breathed a sigh of relief. The button next to the TV controls it's like a big controller. "Oh." Kai turned on the TV using one of his heads, before turning it off again. "There is a blanket in the corner so you can just put it over yourself when you go to sleep," Izuku explained. "I also installed that button over there." Actually you should just press it." Kai pressed the button, and suddenly the roof started to shift and move, and in a few seconds it had completely opened up. The Kaijo boy gasped. Izuku rubbed the back of his head sheepishly. "I thought you might want to fly out of here instead of walking." Kai jumped up in excitement, but luckily the soft floor was made to distribute the weight. The force still knocked Izuku off his feet though. "Thank you so much, father. This room is truly more than I could have ever asked for. Your kindness knows no bounds," Kai praised. Izuku blushed. "I'm glad you like it, son." Kai seemed extremely happy, and after getting over his embarrassment Izuku smiled along with him. "Glad I got all those construction companies together. Even if the paperwork was nightmarish, Izuku would gladly go through all that trouble again." His kids deserved it. New faces. Atoko liked this place. The greenhouse to be specific. Back at his time with DOC, he was forced to spend all his time in his room. No sun, no wind, no outside. Here in the greenhouse, the sun shined down nicely upon his mossy skin, and the wind from the window brushed comfortably against his face. Also, the company. Now there were, of course, his plants. Right now he was trying to grow a sakura tree. It was still just a small sapling at the moment, but he hoped it would grow to be much bigger and much prettier. But then of course there was his more human company. The three girls were Kyaku, Iri, and if he recalled correctly, and they were strange to him. Iri seemed the most normal. She feared him, and she kept her distance. He was used to that. His form was frightening, he understood that. It saddened him, but he understood. At the very least she didn't seem too fearful of him. Nor did she seem disgusted by his very presence. So that was a plus. Kyaku did not seem to mind him at all. Not like she was ignoring him, more like him being there didn't bother her. Which was normal to most people, but to Atoko it was a welcome surprise. And 'twas the strangest. "What's this?" said, inspecting his tree. Getting close to Atoko, not too close, but closer than anyone normally got. Was completely and totally unafraid of his appearance. Which, to be fair, shouldn't have surprised Atoko much given her own appearance. After realizing he didn't like to be touched, didn't attempt to touch him directly, but her eagerness and willingness to be so close to him was something he was unused to. Atoko looked at he didn't bother signing. Unfortunately, Izuku was the only one who knew sign language, meaning that no one else in this house would understand him. "Oh, right, you can't talk," said. "Sorry." They were all they consider it for what it's worth. Much better than with DOC. Warm sun, cool winds, nice people. Who could ask for more? Swimming lessons. Atoko stood at the edge of the pool, looking at it hesitantly. Sansen had been encouraging him to go swimming with her, and after talking to Izuku and making sure no one else would be coming here for a while, Atoko agreed. He felt exposed without his cloak. He'd had it on most of the time, only taking it off during showers. Now he only had on some swim trunks and a floaty. Speaking of showers, those were really his only experiences with water besides drinking it. He'd never been to a pool before because DOC never really let him out of his room before, let alone let him go to a pool. He liked them. The feeling of water against his mossy skin felt nice. So by that logic, this should also feel nice. Of course, there was still the issue of him not being able to swim that also made him nervous. But that was what Izuku and Sansen were for. "Okay, the first thing you need to worry about is not to panic," Izuku told him. "People naturally float, so just don't flail around wildly." Atoko signed to Izuku. "That's not telling me how to swim, that's just telling me how not to swim." Yeah, that's true," Izuku said. Well, one explanation later. After a short explanation, Atoko was ready to jump in. Sansen was already in the pool, waiting for him. It was very weird to see blue slime moving through a pool. Not swimming, just moving. Like she was part of the water. Atoko took a deep breath and jumped in. Splash! And he immediately started sinking. "Don't panic. Don't panic. Don't panic. Don't panic." Atoko did his best to follow Izuku's instructions while he waited to start floating. 5 seconds. Not floating. 10 seconds. Still not floating. 20 seconds, not floating and running out of breath. Okay. Time to panic. Atoko started moving his arms rapidly, trying and failing to push himself upwards. Fortunately, he didn't have to struggle for very long. Sansen grabbed his waist and quickly pulled him to the surface, finally allowing Atoko to breathe. "Oh my god, Atoko, I'm so sorry." Izuku apologized, frantically. "You must weigh significantly more than I thought." Sansen placed Atoko on the poolside and looked over him to make sure he wasn't still drowning. We're gonna have to get you something better than floaties. Izuku started muttering about what he could use. I'm gonna go look for some better options. I'll send someone to get you a towel, just wait here. Izuku ran back towards the house, leaving Atoko and Sanson by themselves. Atoko was disappointed. Despite his hesitation, he had been looking forward to swimming. And now, he would have to wait. Because of his stupid body. Once again ruining something for him. Noticing her brother's despair and pouted as well as a slime could pout. Trying to think about ways to solve this situation as soon as possible. Then, she got an idea. She wrapped herself around Itoko's body, taking the boy off guard, before opening herself up and taking in air and inflating herself. Soon Sanson had turned herself into a big, blue, floaty. Go. Sanson told him. Atoko gave her an astonished look. Trying to non-verbally communicate the words "Are you sure?" Sanson either didn't get the message or didn't care, because she thought he was taking too long and used her slimy body to launch him into the pool. Splash! For a second, Atoko was worried as he felt himself become fully submerged once again, the cool pool water engulfing him from head to toe. However, seconds later his patent-pending sister slime floaty worked her magic and he floated to the top. He gave a sigh of relief, and now that he didn't have to worry about drowning, he could enjoy the water. It was cool, and nice to touch. He felt like he couldn't accidentally set anyone on fire here. It was official. He quite liked the pool. So yeah, this might have been a bit of a lame chapter. Atoko is kind of a supporting character and will have a bit less of a role when compared to everyone else. He'll still be there and have some character moments, but less so when compared to the more central cast. Which is to be expected. With all these characters, not everyone can be an Okako or an Ida, some characters are gonna be an Ojiro. This chapter was mostly to establish Kai and Atoko, as well as Atoko's habitats. Habitats are basically where a character spends almost all of their time. When other characters enter these places, the characters will most likely interact with them. Fukanoko's is her room. However, given how private that place is, people aren't gonna just bump into her. Atoko's is the pool and greenhouse. Much more open areas that the kids can run into. Many characters of course will move around as they please. Most of the characters right now are like that. But later more will appear. Chapter 27. You're Avity's cowl, so I want to ask you, guys. Who is your favorite kid so far? You can include Diri. But I want to know who is your favorite kid. For me, it's hard to pick. As the writer, the way I view these kids might be different from you guys. Eri has an advantage of being canon, so it's easier to picture her doing things. Particularly cute things. Ki's somewhat difficult to write for. Why? Because of her puns. It's not that they're hard to write, it's just that I keep forgetting to write them when I write for her. Kiba is always fun, as her personality makes her easy to write. The only problem is that sometimes she tends to take away attention from the other kids. Fu is not my favorite, but I'm very glad he's here. He acts as the more mature and level-headed person out of everyone, and that keeps the other kids from going off the rails. Sanson is fun. Her quirk and personality make things interesting and are fun to write for. The only catch is that her speech difficulties make autocorrect have a stroke, and she can be a bit too strong at times. Kyaku isn't my favorite character, but she does make my job so much easier. Her memory scene and altering quirk lets me get around and manipulate things much easier. Shraku is also fun. Her quirk is great to write for, and her love of sewing and dressmaking makes it easy to write about her. I haven't utilized Yami as much as I should. That will change, as his quirk is going to be extremely fun to write for in the future. Kai is going to be a bit troublesome to write for given his size. But there is some fun that can be had. I thought making him overly polite would be funny. Atoko is a background character, so he, unfortunately, isn't getting much spotlight. Still glad to have him. Makes the house feel more full and busy. Fukanoko might be my favorite. Although that's heavily biased due to the fact that Bernadetta is one of my favorite characters ever. Anyway, tell me who your favorite is in the reviews. Full cowling. Okako groaned, relaxing on the couch in Izuku's office while eating some mochi. Izuku smiled. Normally his smiles around Okako were awkward and nervous. But this one a little less so. I'm glad you're able to relax. I'm sure hero training must be tough. It is. Okako groaned. Mr. Reizawa is nice, but it also seems like he's on the verge of expelling someone at any moment. It's like there's a bomb that could go off any moment whenever we're in class. It's so stressful. With class being as stressful as it was, Okako started coming over to Izuku's more often. For some free relaxation and free food. Did she feel bad about what could be perceived as taking advantage of their friendship? Yes. Did it feel better to feel like a rich person whenever she came here? Absolutely. And Izuku was more than happy to have her. Yeah, that sounds bad. Izuku knew the feeling. Back when he went to school, anytime he went even a little out of line, bad things happened. He was always on thin ice. Him, and him alone. And also, All Might is a terrible teacher. Okako complained, taking a big scoop of her mochi to cool her off. He has to teach using a handbook and a script. And he's taught me nothing about how to use one. For all. Well, to be fair, he didn't have to deal with the ... arm breaking. He could just use it right away. Izuku explained. Which is just so unfair. Okako took another scoop. And it doesn't make any sense. Why could he use it without any problems and I break my arms? Well, I have a few ideas. Izuku took out a notebook. Firstly, it could be that the quirk is incompatible with your body. Many people are born with quirks that are completely incompatible with their bodies and have adverse effects far worse than the typical effects of overusing or misusing a quirk. And those are quirks they're born with. So there's an even bigger chance that One for All is incompatible with my body. Okako leaned her head back on the sofa as she took in that possibility. It's also possible that One for All simply stocked up too much power. Izuku theorized. One for All increases in power with each user. But it's possible that One for All has gained more power than the human body could actually handle. Those both make sense, Okako said. But either way, that just means I can't use it. That may not be the case, Izuku said, causing her to perk up. 1. It's possible that One for All may adapt to your body, or vice versa, the more you use it. But every time you use it breaks whatever part One use it on, Okako pointed out. Well, that's where the next part comes in. Izuku continued. I got an idea while I was training Kiba. How have you been using One for All? Well, Okako blushed as she remembered All Might's explanation, deciding to phrase it a different way. I just turn it on, and whatever limb I use it One gets powered up and explodes with power. Literally. I see. There might be two issues there. Izuku noted. Firstly, you can only use it at 100% so far. Your body obviously can't handle that, so what if you use it at a lesser percentage? All Might mentioned that. But he didn't tell me how to do it. Okako said. He said something about an egg in the microwave. Izuku got confused for a moment. Before eventually getting it. Oh, I see. When you put an egg in the microwave, the energy pools up inside of it. If too much energy pools up, it explodes. Oh, now that makes sense, Okako said. What you need to do is start spreading the energy out through your body, at a lower level of power, Izuku explained. The more spread out the energy is, it should be easier to control it. Okako thought about it for a moment, before suddenly sitting up. That might work. You can test it if you want. I don't think anyone is in the training room right now. Izuku said, looking at the cameras. Yeah. Let's go. Okako looked down at her treat. After I finish my mochi. 8 minutes and 1 finished mochi later. Alright, try and imagine the egg not exploding in the microwave, Izuku told her. Isn't there a better metaphor? Okako asked. Sorry. Izuku apologized. Okako sighed, before readying herself. She took a bit of time to try and visualize it. Then, she turned it on. Power filled her body, her whole body this time. It was like every cell was being supercharged. But it was more manageable. She felt like she could take it. It wasn't 100%. It felt more like 5%. I think I'm doing it. Okako grunted. She dashed forward and moved much faster than either of them expected, kicking up someone's behind her. Whoa. 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 Okako stopped herself, almost losing her balance in the process. It worked. How are your legs? Izuku asked her. They're fine. I feel a little uncomfortable, but it's nowhere near as bad as using it at 100%. Okako said. That's great. Izuku was extremely excited about her success. I wonder what you could do if you combined this with your gravity manipulation? And let's worry about just using this first. Okako stopped him right there. She loved Izuku's enthusiasm, but she'd rather not be overwhelmed right after learning about this. So what do we call this? Okako asked. This? Well I actually did have a name in mind. But I didn't think you'd want to hear it. Izuku said sheepishly. Well, I don't have any better idea, so let's hear it. Okako smiled at him. Besides, who better to name it than the guy who came up with it? Izuku blushed at the praise and credit he was giving. Well, I was thinking why you could call it full cowling. Full cowling. Okako repeated. Sure. 5% full cowling. Izuku gave a sigh of relief. Glad she liked the name. Well, you're right about getting used to that first. If you can use 5% of your power like breathing, then you might be able to increase the amount of power your body can handle. You can use the training room if you want. I have a lot of equipment for Kiba and Fu. Feel free to use it whenever you want. Thanks, Okako told him, walking up to the green-haired boy. It's nothing really, I'm sure you would have figured it out eventually. And Izuku screamed due to Okako suddenly hugging him. It's not nothing. You have no idea how much this helped me. Okako backed up and grabbed Izuku's hands. In like 5 minutes you've taught me more about One for All than All Might has in months. Well Izuku was, once again turned into a stuttering, blushing mess. Okako giggled at the boy's flusteredness. Thank you. For everything, Izuku. And while Okako watched crashed, a little spider girl watched from the doorway with a smile on her face. 2 days later. Alright, the next match will be young Uraraka versus young Ashito. All Might called out the names of his 2 students. Mina smiled as she and Okako stepped into the ring. Ready to lose? Are you? Okako gave her friend a vicious, yet still friendly grin. The 2 girls took to opposite sides of the ring. Go. All Might called. Okako ran towards Mina, as the pink girl came up with a plan. If she grabs me then I'll be wrung out in no time. I have to use my acid to keep the distance. When she gets close, Mina's thinking was suddenly interrupted by a sudden shout. 5% full cowling. Okako shouted as power filled her veins. Vosh! Before Mina could react, Okako was already in front of her. Whack! Mina panicked and sprayed out acid in front of her. Okako made a sharp dodge and moved to Mina's side. She grabbed Mina's arm, activating her other quirk and making her weightless. Saturn. Okako spun Mina around at speeds that almost made both of them puke. Throw. Mina screamed as Okako threw her at high speeds, right out of the ring. Ga. Mina crashed right into a wall, outside of the ring. Ring out. Uraraka wins. All Might called the fight. Release. Okako deactivated both her quirks. Mina promptly fell to the floor, right on her butt. Ow. Sorry. Okako apologized to her pink friend. Whoa, did you see that? Kaminari called out. I didn't know Uraraka could move that fast. Sero said. Okako, what was that? Taru asked her friend. Yes, Young Uraraka, I must say I am curious as to what that was? All Might said. It's my other quirk. Just a lot less powerful and a lot less bone-breaky. Okako explained. Izuku helped me come up with it a couple days ago. We call it full cowling. Bakugo froze. Did she just say what she thought she said? Young Midoriya. All Might asked. Well, I'll have to give him my thanks next time I see him. Wait, All Might, you know Midoriya too? Asui asked. Yes, we've met a few times. All Might explained. Wait one fucking second. Bakugo suddenly shouted. How do all of you assholes know Deku? Deku? Okako asked. You mean Izuku? Yeah. That fucking nerd. Bakugo clarified. Oh well, we met at Nan, Okako told him. Nan? Even when confused, Bakugo sounded angry. Yeah, none of your business. Okako suddenly snapped. Oh shit, Sero whispered. Bakugo's hands exploded with rage, and he looked ready to charge in there and fight Okako himself. Now young Bakugo. All Might reigned in the boy. People meet other people, outside purely by happenstance. I'm sure that is what happened here. I met young Midoriya when he entered witness protection after providing crucial evidence and testimony, to help take down the Yakuza once and for all. Bakugo froze once again, not believing his ears. Eh? All Might turned to the students. While I'm talking about that, now would be a good time to explain another important part of a hero's job. Witness protection. You see, sometimes villains slip up and give themselves away in front of civilians. These civilians either see something incriminating or find evidence that could be used to put away those villains for good. However, sometimes those villains have power and influence extending to outside just themselves. And as such, they would want to silence these people. As a hero, it's your job to watch these people until the danger has passed. This was the case for young Izuku Midoriya. For years we had been struggling to prove Yakuza's illegal actions. But young Midoriya managed to not only save a young girl from their clutches, but also gain video evidence of their wrongdoings, that allowed us to storm their hideout, and finally put that old evil down for good. Neat. So Okako's boyfriend took down the Yakuza. Nice catch, girl. Mina teased her friend. Yay, huh? Okako's face turned red. He's not my boyfriend, Mina. We're just good friends. Very good friends. Sir. Mina gave her the biggest shit-eating grin she'd ever seen. Bakugo had been frozen, deep in thought. What the hell has Deku been up to? His palms exploded, shaking him out of his thoughts. He'd ask him when he saw him. Hey, round face. Where the hell is Deku hiding? Bakugo barked. I'd say to look up your ass, but your head's up there 24/7, so that's probably the first place you looked, Okako told him sarcastically. She didn't normally make comments like this, but given who she was talking to, she'd make an exception. Alright, that's it. All Might. Let me be her. Bakugo shouted, getting into a battle-ready stance. Please do. Okako activated full cowling. All Might sighed. Looks like he'd have to keep these two off each other's throats. Again. Young hero versus younger heroes. Izuku nervously watched Kiba's stream, watching the chaos that was erupting outside. He was more than happy to help Okako improve and let her train, but this was. Outside, Okako dodged one of Sansen's slime tendrils using full cowling, before immediately having to dodge another one. Kiba was right. Sansen is a nightmare to fight. Okako thought as the slime girl was quickly backing her up into a cliffside. The girl was in her half-acid state, meaning she was especially deadly. Not to mention she couldn't exactly hit her either. She dodged some more of Sansen's tentacles. She found her back to the wall with Sansen's large figure toying over her. Allow me to assist you, sister. Kai stomped towards Okako. The vibrations of his footsteps went through the ground, shaking it like a mini earthquake. The vibrations picked up through the ground and went right through Sansen. Suddenly she found it harder to control her liquid body. This is my chance. Okako touched herself with her finger pads, making herself weightless. Astro Leap. Okako jumped up into the air, going higher and higher until she reached the top of the cliff. Release. Okako stopped the effects of her quirk and landed on the edge of the cliff. This however brought her face to faces with Kai. Roar. Kai said rather than actually roaring. All three of his heads went right at Okako. As you can imagine, it was completely terrifying to have three enormous hydra heads coming right at you with their teeth bared. So Okako did what any sane person would do, ran back as fast as she could. In fact, she ran back a bit faster than she should have. Ah! Okako felt a pain in her legs after just getting out of range of Kai's head. I panicked. I used too much power. Okako grimaced. Then suddenly, the ground under her started shaking. Okako jumped up just as the ground exploded, and Kiba revealed herself. Surprise! Kiba shouted, and I have one more. Kiba threw ... something at Okako. Looked like a roughed up human corpse ... Oh, it was Fu. After dragging him roughly through the ground, he must have lost a considerable amount of flesh and skin. Fu landed right on Okako while she was still in midair and bit into her arm. AHHH. Okako shouted out in pain as she looked at the regenerating corpse boy who was leaking blood like crazy. This is as gross as it is painful. Okako needed to get this kid off her ASAP. One positive about fighting Fu though, she never needed to worry about hurting him. Sorry, Fu. I know you can't feel this, but I still feel really bad. Okako apologized for what she was about to do. Okako punched Fu in the face, breaking his jaw as well as several other things. The two of them fell to the floor, Okako landing on her feet while Fu fell on his back, making a pile of blood. I don't know what's gonna make me vomit worse, my quirk or his. Okako grimaced at the boy. This unfortunately left her wide open for Kiba to tackle her off the cliff. Okako saw the ground coming up quickly, and turned herself around midair, facing Kiba towards the ground. Crash. Ow. Okako groaned. Fortunately for her, Kiba broke her fall. Unfortunately for her, it did very little damage, and Kiba recovered much quicker than her. Kiba pushed Okako, causing her to go flying once again. Okako groaned. At least I'm getting some nausea training. When Okako fell close to the ground, she used her quirk on herself, causing her to float, before immediately canceling it, letting her land safely. Well ... maybe not safely. Because she was now surrounded by all of the children except Fu, and she was about to throw up. Bwah. Never mind, she was throwing up. Sansan was about to charge at her, but Kiba put up her hand to stop her. Wait. Kiba told her. We have to wait for Fu. We can't dramatically surround her unless all of us are here. Fu. Get down here. There was a pause for about half a second before there was a sudden splat. Fu had jumped off the cliff and splattered on the ground. Great, now we wait for him to regenerate, Kiba ordered. To Okako's surprise and relief, they all obeyed this order, although Sansan seemed annoyed by it. No other choice. I have to do it now. Okako wiped her mouth and got on her feet. Oh? Trying to fight? Or perhaps run? Kiba laughed. How do you plan to? Okako kicked off into a sprint, and the moment she did, she touched herself. Shooting star. Okako shouted. Now weightless, Okako shoots off like a bullet into the thick forest. However, Okako hadn't quite mastered the move, leading her to crash and break through several trees until she landed in another clearing. Ow! Okako groaned as she pulled herself up. Remind me never to fight all the kids at once. Ever. Ever again. As she was getting up, Kiba ran right up to her. Ha! Clever trick. You may have escaped from my siblings for now, but my speed far outclasses them. Kiba broke out into a monologue, giving Okako time to think. There was a fallen tree right next to her, a big one. Okako touched the tree, making it weightless, and quickly picked it up. Comet home run. Okako swung the tree, hitting Kiba in the air. Curses. Kiba swore as she got hit further and further away. Okako sighed with relief. Hopefully, that keeps her down ... or just keeps her away from me for a while. Stomp. Suddenly a shadow loomed over her, as Kai had finally caught up. Ah, there you are. You are very strong, Miss Uraraka. Thank you for this opportunity to fight a great opponent like you. Kai said. Oh, thank you, Kai, you are so sweet. Okako giggled, praising the boy's manners. You're welcome. Now please prepare to be beaten. One of Kai's heads came down towards Okako, but the brunette batted it away with her tree. Ow! Kai shook off the blow, and kept trying to grab Okako with one of his heads, each time getting hit with the tree. Seeing how this wasn't working, Kai decided to try something else. He stomped the ground as hard as he could, causing the ground around them to break apart. With her footing breaking from under her, Okako tripped and fell on her butt, also dropping her tree. Aha! I have you now! Kai got so excited, he rushed Okako with all three of his heads. Okako, thinking quickly, used her quirk on the chunks of the broken ground beneath her, and when Kai came close enough, she threw it in his faces. Ah! Kai cried as the chunks of ground hit his faces and broke apart, getting dirt and rock in his eyes. He backed up and started shaking his heads, trying to get all of the stuff out of his eyes so he could see again. When he finally did, he looked back down, only to notice that Okako was gone. Before he could react to that, however, thwack. While Kai had been trying to clear his eyes, Okako had used her quirk to jump high into the air with her tree, before coming back down and slamming the tree on Kai's middle head. Kai stumbled back, his middle head was now seeing stars. Okako meanwhile let go of the tree and used her quirk to lower herself gently to the ground. While the tree fell to the ground with a loud snap, breaking apart into splinters. Ow! Kai's left head groaned. That hurt. A lot. Kai's right head said. If you do not mind, I would like to withdraw from battle. Oh, did I hit you too hard? Okako asked him, concerned she may have overdone it. No, I'm sure I'll be fine. I just need to go rest for some time, Kai said as he stomped away. After Kai had gotten a considerable distance, Okako was immediately attacked by Sanson. The slime girl launched a surprise attack from the trees, grabbing Okako with her giant slimy hand and hitting her against a tree. Ah! Okako tried to grab onto Sanson, to free herself from the gooey girl's grip, but her hands just went right through her. What she did do was activate her quirk on her though. Suddenly Sanson felt light. Very light. Her body felt completely different. And a world of new capabilities was open to her. She lifted herself into the air, bringing Okako with her, before slamming her down onto the ground. Gah! The wind was knocked out of Okako as spit and blood came out of her mouth. Okako couldn't move, after that, for a good couple of minutes. Having to spend those minutes recovering from the impact, struggling to breathe, and coughing out blood. Okay. I think this went too far. Okako was thinking of calling it quits when she saw Sanson in the air above her. It looked like the slime girl had completely forgotten about her, in favor of enjoying her new weightlessness. It looked like she was trying to fly by moving her body around. I don't really think I can beat her. My quirk only makes her stronger. If only I could make things heavier instead. Okako thought. And then suddenly Okako heard a noise, the same noise that happened whenever she activated her quirk. Splat. Sanson suddenly plopped to the ground. The slime girl tried to move, but much to her horror, she found she couldn't move upwards at all. What's worse is that the acidy parts of her were melting the ground beneath her, slowly putting her into a hole. Okako was surprised, to say the least. She didn't release her quirk, so why was Sanson on the ground now? She, cautiously, approached the slime girl and touched the non-acidic part of her. It felt heavy. But not the typical kind of heavy, it felt like something was pressing down on it. Like gravity itself had increased its effect on her. Did I do this? But my quirk only stops gravity. It doesn't make it stronger. Is this because of One for All? Okako wondered. Wop. Egg. Eeg. Sanson tried to call out to Okako and ask her to stop, but making a mouth and vocal cords was hard with gravity pressing down on her like that. Oh. Sorry, Sanson. Make a squishy sound if you give up. Okako told her. Sanson made a sound like a sponge getting squeezed. Okako pressed her fingertips together. Release. Sanson felt the weight on her body vanish and she immediately started moving around, celebrating her freedom. Alright, now Okako heard an ahem coming from her left. She turned and saw Fu was standing there. I think we should stop now, Fu told her. When Kiba comes back she'll probably be a bit less confident and a bit more punchy, so we should stop before your injuries get even worse. Okako thought about it for a moment. She felt the pain and nausea course through her body and decided that Fu was right. Yeah. Let's stop here. Okako sat down, taking deep breaths, and finally letting herself relax. Vrosh. Aha. Did you think you could get the best of me? Kiba dashed into the clearing. You may have caught me by surprise before. But now the fight is over, Fu told her. Kiba instantly deflated, all the wind being taken right out of her sails. Oh come on. Kiba stomped the ground in frustration. Sorry Kiba. Not everyone can have as much stamina as you. Okako stroked the girl's ego. You're just too strong. Kiba's frustration dissipated, and a confident smirk appeared on her face. Well, I suppose that is a downside of being so great. Truku. Did you get everything? Truku jumped down from one of the nearby trees, holding a camera which she had been using to record the entire fight. It was a little hard given that you all kept dashing around the forest. But I did the best I could. Truku sighed. Next time, try to stay in the same area. Kiba was about to say something but Fu had a feeling it would be something snarky and ungrateful, so he shoved his fingers in her mouth and broke them off using her teeth. We'll try. Next time. 10 minutes later. I can't believe you actually fought them all at once, Izuku told Okako as he patched up her wounds. After getting back, Izuku found that all the kids were mostly uninjured. Kiba had a few bruises, but nothing much. Okako took a bit more time to attend to, so she was currently in the med bay with Izuku. Yeah, I am never doing that again. Okako groaned. They're not called overly powerful children for nothing. Izuku nodded as he continued to treat her. You're pretty good at this. Okako praised him. Well, I had practice, Izuku explained. Okako frowned, knowing exactly what that meant. Before the mood could get awkward, Okako decided it was the time to bring up the strange occurrence that happened during the fight. Well, something interesting happened when I was fighting Sanson, Okako mentioned. I think I increased the gravity on her. Izuku paused. But doesn't your quirk only let you make things weightless? That's what I thought. But I definitely increased gravity. Okako was sure of it. Do you think One for All might have done that? Izuku brought his hand to his chin and thought about it. It's possible that One for All doesn't only boost your physical capabilities, but also your quirk's overall power. But you can't make things extra weightless. So perhaps instead it altered the limitations of your quirk? Izuku went into a muttering storm as he absent-mindedly bandaged Okako. Well, looks like that will keep his mind busy for a while. Okako smiled at Izuku's antics. I wonder how many secrets are in One for All. It's kind of exciting. And terrifying. All Might's not gonna be any help, so I guess it's up to me and Izuku to figure it out. So yeah, a few things. Firstly, how did Izuku manage to figure out full calling early? Well, Izuku is always better at helping others than he is himself. This is just part of that. Secondly, why change what Okako's quirk can do? Well, One for All does alter or change quirks, typically making them more powerful. However, you can't make something extra not affected by gravity, so I did this instead. More might be coming in the future. Thirdly, I want to stress this now. If you put your OC or quirk ideas in the reviews, I can't respond to them. I'm saying this because I want to stress, I do not steal ideas. If you have an idea and I put it in my story, then I will give you credit, providing that you say you want credit. However, sometimes, I come up with that idea before someone. Now when this happens in the PMs, I tell them that I had this idea first. However, like I said, if you put your idea in the reviews, I can't do that. Fourth, for everyone saying they want more UA, well, you're gonna get it next chapter. Not the students. I'm waiting until we have more kids for the kids to interact with the entirety of Class 1A. Chapter 28. Teacher's visit. This is a bit much, Aizawa commented. He, Present Mick, and Nezu were standing right outside the gate of Izuku's home and were currently marveling at how large it was compared to the average house. Not at all, Aizawa. To house this many children with quirks like these, it may not be big enough. Nezu half joked. The gates opened, and out walked Izuku with Kyaku by his side, or more accurately, hiding behind his leg. Hello. Welcome. Izuku said with no small amount of enthusiasm and nervousness. It's an honor to meet you all, Present Mick. Nezu. Eraserhead. 4 heroes in my own home. Wonderful. A fanboy. Aizawa sighed. And we're glad to finally meet you as well, Mr. Midoriya, Nezu said. It's nice to meet the person taking so much responsibility at such a young age. And who's this little lady? Mick said, kneeling down to get on eye level with Kyaku. Hi. Your voice is annoying. Kyaku growled at him from behind Izuku's leg. Mick recoiled from comment. Kyaku. Izuku chastised the girl. Aizawa smirked from under his scarf. I like this kid. This is Kyaku. One of my daughters. Izuku introduced her. She's a bit paranoid of new people. I can sympathize with that. Nezu looked at the purple-haired girl with amusement. You need to protect your family from all the people who want to hurt them. HMPH. Kyaku didn't like the way Nezu instantly hit the nail on the head. It felt like he was seeing through her with his beady little eyes. Well, are we gonna go inside or what? Aizawa asked. Yes, of course. Izuku turned around and started walking towards the house. Let me show you around. As they walked towards the entrance of the house, they all noticed Kai's room in the distance. What's that? Present Mick asked. Oh, that's Kai's room, Izuku explained. He's a big. I would imagine, considering the size of the room, Nezu said. I imagine everything else is scaled up to his size. Of course, Izuku told him. I think he has everything he needs to be comfortable. He hasn't complained about anything, but he's a very polite boy, so I'm worried I might be missing something and he just hasn't told me. Perhaps we'll take a look at that later, Nezu said. For now, let's go inside, shall we? 7 minutes later, after giving them a tour around some parts of the house, until they finally reached the training room. And this is the trio. There you are, Kiba. And Fu too. Izuku said after seeing the vampire girl lifting very heavy weights that were twice the size of her body. Fu seemed to be spotting her, and there were some blood and broken arms on the ground, implying that his quirk had been used. Hey, Dad. Fu noticed the 3 heroes next to him. Are those the heroes you said were visiting? Heroes? Kiba, in her excitement, threw her weights into where they hit the ceiling, came back down, and landed on Fu, crushing him and turning him into a pile of messed up flesh and bone. Present Mick panicked, with the other 2 heroes doing the same, albeit in a more collected fashion, with Aizawa's eyes becoming extremely wide and Nezu just freezing completely. Kiba. Izuku scolded the girl with a very upset-sounding voice. What have I told you about controlling your strength? Not to show off or let my emotions overwhelm me, Kiba answered sheepishly. If that had been anyone but your brother, they could have been injured or worse. Izuku continued his scolding. Tomorrow's restraint training will be twice as long. Kiba groaned. And you'll be cleaning up all the blood and pieces of flesh, Izuku said, much to the girl's despair. Now get those weights off your brother so he can regenerate properly and introduce yourself to the heroes. Kiba nodded gloomily, before taking the weights off of Fu's regenerating body. So I see he has a regeneration quirk, Nezu said, quickly getting over his shock. And perhaps a pain nullification ability as well? Yes, his quirk practically makes him immortal, so long as he regularly eats meat, Izuku explained. Although because of this the kids tend to get pretty careless with their powers when it comes to him. So I guess we won't be seeing any carpet, Aizawa stated. Why yeah. Izuku laughed nervously. After Fu regenerated, he and Kiba ran to Izuku's side to greet the heroes. Greetings. Kiba noticed Aizawa ... That's a hero? Kiba. Izuku scolded. Ahaha. Yes, despite appearances Eraserhead is in fact a pro hero. Nezu said, laughing at Kiba's reaction. He may look like a hobo, but he's more than capable of beating up the bad guy. President Mick said, also laughing. Ahem. These are Kiba and Fu. You already know what Fu's quirk is. And you've already seen Kiba's super strength. Extremely dangerous super strength. Aizawa said. Strength, speed, toughness, I have it all. Kiba boasted. An exemplar of power and grace. Yeah, it was really graceful how you accidentally crushed me. Fu rolled his eyes. An exemplar of power and grace, most of the time, Kiba added. Kids, these are the heroes Eraserhead and Present Mick. They're also teachers at UA, Izuku explained. And the one in the middle is the principal of U.A, the pro hero Nezu. Oh? Well, then I look forward to entering your school, and then quickly surpassing you, Kiba stated cockily. Aizawa was about to say something, but Nezu raised his paw to silence him. No need to crush a child's spirit yet. Wait until she's under our care for that. We look forward to having you, Miss Kiba, Nezu told her politely, but with an unnerving smile on his face. Nezu expected to find some interesting future students here. Are you planning to become a hero as well, Mr. Fu? Nezu asked the young boy. Yeah, I'm not too strong, but if any villain tries to kill me then they're gonna be there for a while, Fu said half sarcastically. Beating your enemy out through endurance is a decent strategy if that's what your quirk is geared towards, Aizawa told him. And if you can manage it without putting your life at risk. Fu nodded, before looking at Aizawa. I know the other two's quirks, but what's yours? That's Aizawa was about to tell him that he didn't want it well known when Present Mick interrupted. Old Eraserhead here can erase people's quirks. All he has to do is activate his quirk and keep his eyes open, and you can't use your quirk. Aizawa glared at Mick, who completely ignored him. Interesting. Fu pulled out a notebook and started writing things down. Oh, and what's this? Nezu asked. Fu. This? Fu stopped writing and held up his notebook. It's my notes. I like to write about interesting things. Mostly quirks. Fascinating. May I look? Nezu asked, receiving a nod from the zombie boy. Nezu took the notebook and started flipping through it, speed reading through the various blurbs and paragraphs. These are rather good for someone his age. He's clearly smarter and more perceptive than normal children. Seemingly to contrast the girl's lack of intelligence. If this talent was nurtured, I could see his analytic abilities coming in very handy. Nezu deduced. These are very good notes. Keep this up and it could be very useful for your future career. Nezu told him while handing him back the notebook. Thanks. Dad did this before I did, but I thought it was neat, so I started doing it too. Fu explained. Oh? You had notebooks similar to these? Nezu asked Izuku. Why yeah. I mostly stopped writing in them after ... Well, I just didn't see a use for them anymore. Izuku stuttered. Yeah, but Caretaker's notes were much better than his, Kiba said. No offense, brother. Oh no, the older, more experienced person's notes were better than mine. I'm shocked and embarrassed. Fu said sarcastically, causing Present Mick to laugh. Well, we should continue our tour. We shouldn't bother Miss Kiba any further, Not when she has so much work to do, Nezu said, looking at the bloody mess behind them. You. Kiba groaned. The Queen of Eternal Darkness should not have to do such menial labor. The Queen of Eternal Darkness should take responsibility for her mistakes, and try to improve on them, Izuku told her. He's surprisingly mature, especially considering his age and background. Aizawa thought. Still, I can see him being too soft on these kids. Overall not the worst thing, especially considering most of these kids passed, but it could be an issue in the future. With that in mind, Izuku, Kyaku, and the UA staff moved on, leaving Kiba and Fu with the mess. Kiba turned to her brother. So shall we begin cleaning up this mess? We? Fu raised an eyebrow. Izuku only said you had to clean it up. Kiba gasped. Brother. You would not leave me to toil away at such an arduous task all by my lonesome, would you? You make the mess. You clean it up. Maybe next time you'll be more careful and won't splatter my organs all over the floor. Fu said, I'm going to eat and then have Shruku fix my clothes ... again. Kiba pouted heavily as Fu left, before going to get the cleaning supplies. A few minutes later. And this is one of the floors where the children stay, Izuku explained as he moved towards the children's rooms. I assume many of these rooms are altered depending on the child they hold? Nezu asked. Most of them are, Izuku said. Some of the children don't need it. As they walked they saw K sitting outside of Fukanoko's room, seemingly playing battleship with the shy girl through the door. You sunk my battleship. They heard Fukanoko yell from behind the door. Evacuate the ship. Get to the lifeboats. Run. Swim. Izuku smiled as a feeling of happiness gripped onto his heart and tightened his chest. I'm so happy, and Eri managed to befriend her. It's one less thing I have to worry about. I told you I was good at this game. My skills really rock the boat. K giggled at her own pun. Aizawa groaned, catching the girl's attention. Yap. Who was that? Fukanoko panicked. Oh. Dad. Fuku, it's just Dad, Kyaku and the UA heroes he said were coming. Told her. Are they gonna arrest me for having a bad quirk? Fuku continued to panic. Izuku sighed. Fuku, you don't have a bad quirk. There is no such thing as a bad quirk, a villainous quirk, or an evil quirk, and the heroes aren't here to hurt you. That's right, kid. What he said. Present Mick shouted, scaring Fuku even more. SHSSSH. Literally, everyone but K and Fuku shushed the loud hero. Sorry. Mick apologized. Izuku tried to regain his composure. These two are K and Fukanoko. K is one with the snakes for hair and Fukanoko is the one on the other side of the door. Hello. Nezu greeted them cheerily. I am Nezu. Principal of UA, and these two behind me are Eraserhead and Present Mick. It is a pleasure to meet you both. Nice to meet you too, Mr. Mouse. K greeted, before giving him a confused look. Or are you a bear? Or both? Are you a mouse bear? Nezu cackled. Who knows? A mouse bear? Is he going to eat me? Fuku asked. Izuku sighed in exasperation. Please don't take it personally, she's always like this. She's had a ... troublesome history, and that's caused her to gain a persecution complex. It''s ... a big issue. I'm sorry. Fuku wailed. It's not your fault, Izuku said, trying to sound genuine, but you can tell he'd been saying that a lot. It was then that the three UA representatives noticed something about Izuku. He looked tired. If they looked hard enough they could see that Izuku had been hiding the bags under his eyes with some sort of makeup. Now that they got a better look at his body language, it was clearly that of someone trying to hide exhaustion. In case you were wondering, Quirk turns people to stone whenever they see her eyes, Izuku explained. And Fukanoko's quirk allows her to emit a gas that causes hallucinations of the victim's greatest fears. Those two quirks are extremely dangerous. I can only imagine what kind of mental scarring the shy one could cause. It's a good thing they're away from the general populace. Aizawa thought. But the shy one definitely needs quirk counseling. Midoriya is technically a quirk counselor, but considering his age and how stupidly easy it is to get that license, I doubt he's very good. My, what interesting quirks. Would these two also be interested in enrolling at UAS hero course one day? Nezu asked. And no. I mean, no thank you. Fuhai shouted. I could never be a hero. Villains are so scary and mean. And if I was a hero, I'd have to use my quirk on people. And that's bad. That's true. Depending on how bad the hallucinations are, using them on villains might be considered too cruel. Aizawa thought. There were a few cases in history in which a person's quirk caused extreme suffering to a person. So much to the point where using it on even villains was considered excessive, and the people with those quirks were unfortunately barred from being heroes. I want to be a zoologist. Smiled brightly, and all of them. And study snakes. Well, I'm sure you'll be wonderful at it, Nezu told her. And what is it that you would like to be, Miss Fukinoko? I don't know. Fuhai answered honestly. You don't have to worry about that right now. President Mick quickly assured her. You've got a long life ahead of you. So take your time. Okay. Fuhai answered, more scared than reassured. Seeing that President Mick's loud voice would do nothing but scare Fuhai, Izuku decided they needed to move along. We shouldn't keep you from your game any longer, so we'll be on our way, Izuku told the two children as he urged the group to follow him. Okay. Bye Dad. Bye heroes. Bye Kyaku. Said, waving them all goodbye. Bye. Fuhai let out a sigh of relief. Happy they were leaving. And with that, they moved past them and through the halls. After a few minutes of silence, Nezu spoke. I noticed that you may have forgotten to tell us this young lady's quirk, Nezu said, referring to Kyaku. The young girl in response focused her glare on the animal principal. Oh. Yes. Sorry. I must have been distracted, Izuku apologized. Kyaku can see and alter a person's memories by touching their head. I see. Nezu started putting the pieces together. And did she look at any of the other children's memories? Perhaps some of the more unpleasant ones. A few of them. Izuku frowned. And her own life wasn't pleasant before she met us. Kyaku's glare dropped, changing into a sorrowful expression, while clutching Izuku's leg a bit tighter. And that would explain her extreme distrust, Aizawa concluded. Izuku sighed and nodded while petting Kyaku's hair to comfort her. Kyaku is a good girl, she just has a hard time trusting people because of what she's seen and experienced. Would you mind if I had a moment alone with her? Nezu asked, much to Izuku's shock. That depends on Kyaku. Izuku turned to his daughter. Do you want to talk alone with Mr. Nezu? Kyaku was silent for a minute, before looking at Nezu. She didn't trust the rodent bear person. Not at all. And she definitely didn't want to be alone with him. But her father did want her to trust people more, and maybe if Izuku wasn't there, she could get Nezu to let her look at his memories. You won't go far? Kyaku asked her adopted father. I won't, Izuku promised her. We'll just be going to my office and I'll be looking at the cameras the whole time. Kyaku paused before nodding and letting go of Izuku's leg for the first time since the visit started. Izuku seemed hesitant to leave her, but after shooting both Kyaku and Nezu concerned looks, Mick and Aizawa left towards the office. Once the others were out of earshot, Kyaku spoke. What do you want? Kyaku asked shrewdly, keeping a good distance away from him. I just wanted to tell you a bit about myself, Nezu said calmly. Some time ago I was a regular animal. But at some point in my life, I gained my quirk. My body changed, and I became quite a bit smarter. But I was still an animal. Just a slightly different one. And then, humans found me. Kyaku had a distinct feeling that the story was going to get a lot sadder from this point on. They took me to a laboratory and did very bad things to me. They kept me in small cages, and didn't feed me very much. Nezu explained, his smile never dropping. And after many painful experiments, I eventually changed into what I am now, and escaped. After that, much like you, I didn't trust humans and hated them for a very long time. Nezu saw it in her eyes, the words "they're like me" flashed in her mind. How did he know this? Well, unfortunately, there were many people like the ones who hurt him, and they did not limit themselves to just animals. And what better test subjects than children who can't fight back? One of the reasons Nezu loved this job was because he got to see the faces of those criminals as he put them away for good. And even more to his delight, many prisoners shared his disgust towards child experimentation, but not his restraint. But back to Kyaku, it was clear the girl was still not fully trusting him. Why did you stop? Well, as time went on, I saw many things. I saw that humans were capable of more than just cruelty, and at some points, I found I was the one being cruel, Nezu explained. And eventually, someone extended their hand to me. Much like Izuku did to you. And that put me on the path to where I am today. Kyaku seemed to be thinking over his words. Wondering if she should believe him or not. Can I see your memories? Nezu had already predicted that response. After all, if you didn't trust someone and could look at their memories, obviously you'd want to do that. Of course, he didn't want her touching him or looking into his memories, but if he didn't, then she'd think he was suspicious and lose whatever trust he might have built with her. Truly a difficult situation to be in. For anyone but Nezu. Tell me, have you looked at Yuri's memories? Nezu asked. Kyaku flinched, before giving an uneasy nod. Well, judging from the reports I've read about her past, we have somewhat similar backgrounds. Nezu saw the girl flinch again. You're free to look into my memories, but I must ask you, do you want to see what you saw with Yuri, again? Kyaku gave him a very uneasy look, before looking at her hands, considering if she really wanted to see those horrors again. And like Nezu knew she would, she chose not to. You don't need to trust me quite yet. It took me quite some time before I started to trust people. But I want to ask you to open your mind. Nezu told her. Don't think of any group of people as one thing. Whether that be good or bad. Each and every person is different. Unique. Just when you think one person is one thing, they might be something completely different. Take your father for example. Daddy? Kyaku replied. Most of the world wrote him off as weak. Simply because he was quirkless. Nezu said. But he's not. Kyaku protested immediately. Exactly. Nezu agreed. Many people who've been through what Izuku has been through, don't function as well as he does. And most people his age can't even take care of a single child, let alone 11. Izuku is strong, in ways most people don't understand. But people judged him because they couldn't keep an open mind. Do you understand what I'm trying to tell you? Kyaku nodded hesitantly. Very good. Nezu gave her his least creepy smile. Now then, shall we join your father and the others? Kyaku quickly nodded and ran toward Izuku's office. Nezu slowly followed behind her. It's a good thing she never asked what happened to those scientists. And this is part 1 of the UA inspection. Yeah, if you can't tell, Nezu and company are mostly doing this to judge the state of Izuku and the kids, and what they'll need to do in the future. And Izuku is tired. And it's only gonna get worse from here. Chapter 29. Izuku and the teachers walked into his workspace, as Izuku started explaining things. So this is my office, Izuku said. Sorry, it's kind of a mess, but I had a lot of paperwork. Kai's room wasn't easy to make after all. On Izuku's desk and his filing cabinets were papers. Tons and papers. They were about as neat as they could be, but given the number of papers, that wasn't saying much. Oh God, and I thought I hated paperwork. At least I didn't have to do it when I was 15. President Mick cringed. Aizawa meanwhile, looked over some of the finished paperwork. Looks fine. At the very least he's capable of doing the basics. Still, putting aside his age and mental health, this is too much work for one person. While they were doing that, Izuku was looking outside his office window, transfixed on something. "Daddy!" Kyaku rushed in and ran towards Izuku, grabbing his leg. "Kyaku!" Izuku looked away from what he was staring at for a moment to pay attention to her. "Where's Nezu?" "Right here." Nezu walked into the office, before calmly closing the door behind him. Izuku looked at Kyaku and noticed that she seemed to be a little distressed. "Kyaku, is everything okay?" "I'm fine." Kyaku raised her arms, signaling she wanted Izuku to hold her. Izuku promptly picked up the girl and held her in his arms. However, he quickly felt his fatigue catch up to him as Kyaku felt much heavier than she actually was, and he realized he couldn't hold her forever, so he put her on his shoulders. After that, he looked back outside. My, now what is so interesting outside?" Nezu asked, before walking up and looking out the window himself. "Oh. What?" Aizawa asked, before him and President Mick looked out the window themselves. "Oh, outside was a rather strange sight. Kai was laying down in the emptied-out pool. How it got emptied out no one knows, with several other children showering him with water and soup. Koda was using his quirk to douse him with water, while Sansen and Shraku crawled around on his body scrubbing him, while Yami had some Griffin Grim to help wash and dump water onto Kai, but now he was lounging on the side in a lawn chair. "I have many questions," President Mick said with no small amount of disbelief. "I believe that it'd be best to go outside now," Nezu said. "Yeah," Izuku said. Outside a few minutes later, as Shraku was washing her brother, she noticed Izuku, Kyaku, and the UA staff walking up to them. "Guys. Daddy and the UA people are here." Shraku called to her siblings and Koda. Koda stopped spraying water and turned around. Sansen stopped what she was doing and got off her brother, putting down her brushes and spitting out all the soapy water onto the side. After getting all the liquid that wasn't naturally a part of her body off of her, Sansen moved a tendril over to Yami and started rapidly tapping him to wake him up. "Ra? Ra." Yami had a tendency to bite whoever woke him up due to his instincts, so kids like Sansen and Fu were typically given the duty when the need arose. "Pa." Yami spat out Sansen's goo, waking up fully from his short nap. "Dad and the teachers are here," Shraku told her brother as she crawled off of Kai. "It's okay Kai, you can stand." Now that everyone was off of him, Kai used his head to pull himself up. When Izuku, Kyaku, and the UA staff arrived at the pool, the children were already lined up and waiting. "Already lined up by the time we got here. If only my class were this well behaved," Aizawa said. "I believe I know the white one. His name is Yami, correct?" Nezu said, remembering the young boy from the incident that happened not too long ago. "And these creatures are of his creation." Yami said as confirmation. "Didn't the reports say he was feral?" President Mick asked. "He was, but then I had Kyaku use her quirk to teach him about everything," Izuku explained. "There are still a few issues but he's adjusted very well for the most part." "Very good. And clever application of her quirk. Good work on both your parts," Nezu praised, before looking at Sansen who had moved over to him, and started inspecting the teachers. "And who is this?" "That is Sansen." Izuku introduced her. "Her body is made up of acid normally, but thanks to a chemical insertion given to her every 24 hours we've been able to neutralize the acidic properties." "How interesting," Nezu said, reaching out and touching Sansen, inspecting the goo. "Hero," Sansen said. "Sansen also wants to be a hero," Izuku said. "She trains practically every day. I think she'll be a very promising student when the time comes. Her quirk reminds me of the sludge villain. But even more dangerous if you consider the acid," Aizawa thought. "She's gonna be a problem child, I'm sure of it. I also would like to become a hero." Kai bellowed. "It is nice to meet you all. I am Kai Midoriya." I look forward to being her student one day. And we look forward to having you, Nezu told him. He really is big. President Mick whistled. And he's probably going to get bigger as he grows. Aizawa sighed. Both teachers silently hoped that they would be retired by the time Kai came to UA. Meanwhile, Shruka was looking at Aizawa like he was a rotten egg, circling around the tired hero and inspecting him. "Do you want to say something?" Aizawa asked her, not having that patience for her shenanigans. "You're a hero?" Shruka asked him skeptically. President Mick giggled and Aizawa sighed. "Yes. Despite what my appearance may suggest, I am in fact a pro-hero." Shruka grimaced. "Are you perhaps the Justice Hobo?" President Mick couldn't hold back his laughter and started cackling hysterically. "The Justice Hobo? Ha ha ha." Aizawa's eyes twitched. "Shruka!" Izuku shouted, slightly horrified by the insult. "I'm sorry father, but look at him." Shruka pointed to Eraserhead. "It's just so bare. He might as well be wearing a black onesie with a belt, scarf, and goggles. I am so sorry about her." Izuku apologized. "She's very into clothing and designs and takes them a bit too seriously." "I do not." Shruka pouted. "What about that time you wrestled your sister through several walls and destroyed multiple rooms just because she wouldn't try on your clothes?" Izuku reminded her. Shruka grimaced at the memory, not giving a response to that comment. "What people choose to wear is their choice. Now please apologize to Eraserhead," Izuku told her. Shruka looked at Eraserhead, cringing for a moment before looking away and apologizing. "I'm sorry sir." Eraserhead grunted. "Not the first time this has happened. Annoyingly, it won't be the last." Wanting to divert attention away from this, Izuku looked over to Kota. This is Kota Izumi. I haven't adopted him, he's just a friend of everyone here." "Ah, I see. Good to see the children are not completely isolated from the outside world. I was concerned the only person outside this family and a part DOC to come here was Miss Uraraka," Nezu said. "Are we going to ask what is going on out here or are we just gonna ignore it?" Mick asked. "Because I don't know about the rest of you, but I'm confused. Simple, Kai didn't smell too good so we decided to give him a bath," Shruka explained. Wash, Sanson said. Izuku's pupils shrunk as he came to a horrifying realization. "Oh my god, I forgot to give him a bathroom. Looks like that fatigue is making him sloppy," Nezu thought. Oh my god, oh my god, oh my god. I need to go back and fix this immediately." Izuku started running towards the house while pulling out his phone to make some calls. "I will go assist him," Nezu said. "I have a feeling he'll need all the help he can get." The two teachers nodded, and Nezu calmly walked towards the house. Once the pair made it back to the house, President Mick suddenly had a thought. "Hey, if you didn't have a bathroom where have you been going you know?" President Mick asked. The answer the two received would cause them to regret even thinking of asking that question. Meanwhile, in the greenhouse, Eri was glad that it didn't seem like the teachers would be coming here. She had prepared herself to meet new people today, but it's not like she really wanted to. Meeting people she didn't know was scary, especially adults. And she didn't like the idea of being uncomfortable in the greenhouse. It was one of her favorite places to go. It was calm, quiet, and nice and warm. And as more plants were added, the nicer it was to look at too. And it would only get better when the apple tree grew in. She liked it here. When it was just her and Atoko. Oh, Atoko was here too. The large boy was almost always here, attending to the plants. When he first came here he was a bit scary, but he had quickly gotten over his appearance. After all, she had other strange and scary-looking siblings. And she had quickly found she quite liked the boy. He was quiet, unlike many of her siblings, and he didn't move around so quickly or overwhelm her by constantly moving from thing to thing. He had also started planting many new plants, some had looked quite pretty. She hadn't voiced this appreciation. She still wasn't very good at approaching people, and she knew he appreciated his space, which she definitely understood. Besides, she had a feeling that somehow, he understood. About an hour later, at the gates, Izuku, Kyaku, and the UA staff stood outside the gates as the UA staff were about to leave. "Thank you for helping me with the bathroom situation." Izuku bowed as thanks to Nezu. "It was my pleasure. I've had experience dealing with large children, so I was more than happy to lend my expertise," Nezu said. "What's more, it appears you needed some assistance. You do have a lot on your plate after all." "I can handle it," Izuku said quickly. "I'm sure you can," Aizawa said dryly. "But don't forget we're all ... Okay, most of us here are human. And we all require rest. If you don't start hiring help, you're going to start seeing major health problems." Kyaku looked concerningly at her father. I'll be fine," Izuku said. "I've been looking around for help for a while. I haven't found anyone, but I will." Mick gave Izuku a concerned look, as he knew the kid wasn't being fully truthful. Not that he could really do anything about it. Calling him out would likely do nothing but cause more stress, which would not be healthy for him both mentally and physically. "Take care of yourself, kid. For their sakes at least." "I will," Izuku said a bit too quickly. "Well, we shouldn't keep you any longer. Farewell, Midoriya." Nezu as he and the teachers turned to leave. After they were out of earshot, Nezu spoke. "We'll be having a meeting about this tomorrow morning." "I figured as much," Aizawa said. Meanwhile, Izuku was praising Kyaku. "You were very good today," he told her while patting her head. "Thank you for behaving." Kyaku grinned at receiving praise. "Can I have chocolate, Daddy?" "Sure. But just one," Izuku told her as they walked back towards the house. The next morning, UA meeting room. "So I'm guessing this about the Midoriya visit?" All Might asked. "Indeed," Nezu said. "Good news. The situation is much better than we thought." "Oh good, but given what we thought, I'm sure there are still plenty of things to worry about," Snipe said. "Is at least more competent than the OPCCC, or rather, DOC-13 asked." "Quite," Nezu said. "Mr. Midoriya is very mature for his age and is smarter than most people his age as well. He's handling this the best he can and is doing everything in his power to help these children." All Might smiled. He already knew these things, but it was nice to hear Nezu put everyone else at ease about Izuku's intentions. However, Nezu added, putting aside his age, he was still mentally and physically abused, outcast by society, and it shows. "Did he show any resentment or distrust you while you were there?" Cementos asked. "Not at all. Midoriya is clearly a hero fan and was quite excited to have us there," Nezu refuted. One of his daughters thought. "She was not happy," Mick added. "She was giving us the stink eye the whole time." Back to Midoriya, while he didn't seem to distrust us, it's possible that's only because we're heroes, Aizawa said. He seems to have some level of distrust for others, and this is keeping him from hiring anyone to help him. While a fair level of skepticism is good considering the situation, for the number of children under his care he is going to need help. Midnight said. It was clear he was already exhausting himself, Aizawa said. However, he seems to have little to no care for his own health, prioritizing anything and everything involving the children first. Izuku Midoriya was called useless, and discriminated against for his entire life. Snipe reminded them. As such, his self-worth and confidence are almost non-existent, as is his sense of self-preservation. Add to that his nature of wanting to help people and all the children he needs to help at once, he simply has little to no time to think of himself. Nor does he desire to. And then there is of course the matter of his dream. Or rather his former dream. Nezu sipped his tea. Izuku Midoriya wanted to be a hero. However, since he could not achieve that dream, he's attempting to fill the void, that feeling of aimlessness and uselessness. But a lifelong dream is not easily replaced. One of the reasons Midoriya does seek help or try to decrease his workload is simply because, without the work, Midoriya feels incomplete. Anytime his thoughts are not on his work, he is berating himself for giving up on his dream. He works to feel useful, and if he asks for help or stops working at any given point, then that feeling of usefulness also stops. The point of the matter is, even if Midoriya's health falls to shambles, he will not stop working, nor can anyone make him. So how do we help him then? All Might asked. It's not like we can force him to take part in therapy, and we can't hire people for him. We ourselves don't have to do much, Nezu said. But our first step is to wait for him to collapse. What? There was a general feeling of shock among the teachers, at the suggestion of letting Izuku run himself into the ground. Think about it logically. We can't stop Midoriya from working, nor can we convince him to slow down. Inevitably Midoriya will overwork himself too hard and fall ill, leading to a physical and mental collapse. There is simply nothing we can do about this, Nezu explained. What we can do is be there afterward to provide support for him and the children. But how exactly are we gonna do that? Snipe asked. We can't personally be there all the time, not with hero duties and our classes, and having non-heroes come in whom Midoriya would distrust would only add to his stress, not to mention the effect it would have on the children. And that is where Miss Uraraka and the students come in, Nezu said. Miss Uraraka will be key in helping Midoriya, both with the children and with his mental and physical recovery. And what exactly do you mean by that? Aizawa had a feeling he wouldn't like this. Once Midoriya collapses, we will send Class 1A, Sans Bakugo, to the Midoriya household to look after the children and Midoriya. As you said, sending strangers there would simply stress everyone there, but people with Miss Uraraka's recommendation would likely be a different matter. Miss Uraraka will assist Midoriya during his time of need and take advantage of his weakened mental state to convince him to seek help both for his job and for his mind. This will hopefully put Midoriya on the path to fixing his damaged psyche, so that way he can truly help these children without putting himself at risk. I don't like having to use children to fix this, and it feels like we're abusing young Uraraka's friendship with him, All Might said. Couldn't we simply approach his mother for help? Or maybe I could do something? Midoriya is a huge fan of mine. Unfortunately Midoriya's mother is not the best person for this. She shares several of the same mental issues that he does, albeit not as bad. While she will certainly be involved, we can't rely on her to fix the situation, Nezu explained. And to put it simply, All Might, let us not forget who caused him to give up on the dream, and sent him into a spiral of depression. All Might grimaced and looked away in shame. We can't forget that even after his collapse, Midoriya is still in charge, and he needs to let us in, Nezu explained. We can't risk Midoriya refusing our aid and attempting to keep working in his weakened state. We need someone he trusts completely. Someone who hasn't hurt him. And that leaves only Miss Uraraka, his only true friend. So in the end the only way to fix a problem caused by putting a child in charge of other children is more children, Aizawa said. I'd be poetic if it wasn't so idiotic. Well, to be fair, if Midoriya hadn't met Hiri and gotten this job, he most likely would have ended his own life, Nezu said simply, causing several teachers to cringe and All Might to turn pale. While this is going to be a difficult road ahead of us, I feel this could very well turn out to be a blessing for both Midoriya and the children. Nezu took another sip of his tea. The fate of many children lies in our hands and the hands of our students. Let us handle this with care. Things got a bit serious this chapter. Don't worry, the next chapter will be more lighthearted. However, there is more seriousness to come. Chapter 30. Damages. There was a hole in his office floor. It was not just in his office floor, however, the hole led all the way down from his office to the bottom of his house in the kitchen. How did that happen? Well, the answer was the usual one in regards to things being broken. Kiba. The girl had been testing her abilities, on camera of course, And one of those tests was inspired by a test that Okako had told her about in her first day at UA ball throwing. Not to her credit, she didn't throw it at the house itself. She actually threw it straight up into the air. The problem was simple, however: what comes up must come down. And due to changes in the wind, slight movements with momentum and all of that, the ball came crashing down, not into the backyard, but through the entire house. Izuku sighed and rubbed his temples. That girl, he loved her to death, but she caused him so much trouble. Kiba had of course been reprimanded, but not much of a punishment was given, seeing as she didn't really predict the ball moving so far from where she had thrown it, and the damages were ultimately small and had not affected anyone with the exception of scaring the crap out of Yami when it happened. The holes were small, but still ... it was just more paperwork for him to do. That Kiba girl sure doesn't quit, huh? Mr. Uraraka asked, having come to inspect the damage. No, she doesn't. Izuku felt more and more tired as he looked at the hole. That girl may single-handedly be keeping us in a job. Mr. Uraraka jokes. No, it's definitely not just her, Izuku said, remembering the time Fu and Shiraku accidentally broke the staircase by smashing Fu into it. You okay, boy? That paperwork getting to ya? Or is all this finally starting to affect your wallet? Mr. Uraraka asked nervously. Izuku was their main source of income. Heck, since they moved here he was their only source of income, and his pockets dried up, so did theirs. No, money isn't an issue. This affects money-wise about as much as buying a candy bar, Izuku said, before realizing how it could be interpreted by his present company, and not that I'm bragging or anything. Mr. Uraraka laughed. Don't worry about it, boy. The richer you are, the more money we get. You bragging about it just reassures me I'm not gonna be out of a job. And that I can keep supporting my daughter. Why yeah. Izuku stuttered. Despite doing what basically everyone would consider a kind deed in hiring Okako's parents, Izuku still hadn't told Okako that he did it, nor did he tell the Urarakas why he hired them out of all people, despite the fact they lived so far away and weren't exactly a famous high-price construction company like most wealthy people would hire. The main reason why is because while Izuku knew it was an overall helpful thing for him to do, he wasn't sure how they would perceive it. On Okako's front, Izuku was concerned she'd think it was a handout or an act of pity, and she'd get so offended she wouldn't want to be friends with him anymore. And on the Uraraka's part, he was concerned they'd see this as him hitting on their daughter. So he wanted to find the perfect way to explain this to both of them. "Dad?" shouted a familiar voice from behind the two of them. "Why is my life like this?" Izuku wondered. "Shako?" Mr. Uraraka said, surprised at his daughter's sudden appearance. "What are you doing here?" "What am I doing here? What are you doing here?" Okako asked. "This isn't a few hours road trip from home, you know? Well, me and your mother were gonna surprise you with this, but we moved here for work," Mr. Uraraka explained. "Mr. Midoriya here offered us a contract to stay here and do repairs on his house from time to time." "Huh?" Okako screeched in confusion. This had completely come out of nowhere for her. Or had it? Okako looked at Izuku with a pout. This was exactly the kind of thing Izuku would do. Spend exorbitant amounts of money and inconvenience himself for the sake of someone else. If she didn't mention she didn't like handouts, he would have thrown money at her so hard it'd make her spin. That didn't make it any less sweet though. "Izuku, you goof. Why didn't you tell me about this? This is great." Okako made sure to express the fact that this was a good thing, and that she liked it. Knowing Izuku, he'd somehow thought she could think this was a bad thing. While Izuku was breathing a sigh of relief, Mr. Uraraka looked between the two of them. "Wait a minute, you two know each other?" Izuku quickly started getting nervous yet as he realized he was not yet out of the doghouse. "Yeah, Dad, sorry I didn't have the chance to tell you about him. Izuku is my best friend," Okako explained. "Izuku?" Mr. Uraraka was a little surprised by the use of Izuku's first name by his daughter. But more things slowly started to make sense to him as he put the pieces together. "Oh, I see what's going on here. Why you do?" Izuku asked, with the slight hope he had that things would go well showing in his voice. "Yeah, this is an elaborate attempt to flirt with my daughter," Mr. Uraraka said. Izuku then promptly turned from green to red, as he blushed so hard he nearly passed out from blood rushing to his face. "Ayawa Dad!" Okako shouted at her. "Father?" her face turning red as well. "Get over here." Okako opened the door leading to the small hallway outside his office and rushed her father through it, before closing the door so Izuku couldn't hear it. "Okay, I know you don't know him too well, but this is definitely not flirting," Okako said in a whisper. "We're just really good friends. Come on, sweetheart, no one would go through all this trouble just for a friend," Mr. Uraraka said. "At least he knows my baby girl is worth the money I'll give him that." "Dad, Izuku is just that nice," Okako insisted. "He literally adopts kids no one else wants because they can kill them. Just because he wants to give them a nice childhood." Mr. Uraraka paused. "Fair point. Izuku only has one real friend, me. So of course he's willing to do something like this," Okako said. "He'd probably do a lot of crazy things if I asked him to. Something I'm trying not to take advantage of." Mr. Uraraka didn't seem convinced. "I don't know, honey. Dad, trust me when I say, the day Izuku flirts with someone is the day pigs fly. That boy is shyer than half the kids here, and most of them have been abused in some way," Okako said. "He's just a really nice guy, who's really glad to finally have a friend. Also, he's rich. This probably wasn't too much of an issue for him money-wise. He has a lot of things on his plate, so please don't stress him out with things like this." There was a pause after Okako's speech, as Mr. Uraraka thought it over. "I guess I'll drop it. For now. He is my employer after all. But still, if he wants to get with my little girl, he's gonna have to go through me first." Okako shook her head, blush still covering her face. "It's not like that. Just go back inside and say thank you. Then, we can go home and get Mom and we can celebrate being together again." Mr. Uraraka smiled at his daughter. "Sure honey, me and your mother would love to." Both of them smiled, before re-entering Izuku's office, and seeing that the boy was currently a moment away from having a nervous breakdown. "Hey there, sorry about that. No problems here. We'll have those holes fixed up in no time," Mr. Uraraka said. Oh, really, that's good," Izuku said nervously. "Yes, well I think I'll go talk to the others. You two kids behave," Mr. Uraraka jokes. "Dad." Okako and Izuku both blushed heavily as Mr. Uraraka left. He smiled, as he walked. At the end of the day, it didn't matter if they were friends or something more for now. Izuku clearly valued his daughter, and that was what mattered. So for now, he'd stay back and watch. Just for now. The hard choices Izuku tried not to let his nervousness show. Yesterday Nami had called him and told him that some government bigwigs from the upper echelons of DOC wanted to meet with him. He had no idea what it could be about, but he had a distinct feeling that whatever it was about, he wasn't going to like it. "Thank you for choosing to meet with us, Mr. Midoriya," said one of the three men in suits that had come into his office. "I was told this was a matter important to the children," Izuku said, a nervous sweat drop dripping down his forehead. "Yes. About that, we represent the second level of DOC, the level you and most people don't interact with," the man said. "As you know, DOC's duty is to protect society from overly powerful children or OPCs, as well as protecting the children themselves." Izuku nodded. "However, you've only been dealing with the first level," the man continued. "This level has a few tasks. 1. Finding OPCs. 2. Helping out guardians of OPCs, to make sure the child can live safely in society. And 2. Taking in OPCs whose parents have left them one way or another, and then giving them to you." Yes, Izuku said, wondering where this was going. However, the second level appropriately deals with the second level of OPCs. These OPCs simply cannot exist within normal society, due to the nature of their quirk being so dangerous that we cannot assure they wouldn't kill dozens of people accidentally every year. The man said. As such, our job is simply to find these OPCs and contain them within our facilities. Indefinitely. Izuku's eyes widened. Wait, by indefinitely do you mean forever, or until we manage to find a way to reduce their danger level to a level 1 OPC? However, that rarely happens. Most of the time the child is simply confined in a facility for the rest of their lives. The man explained. Izuku felt the rush of oncoming emotions: shock, anger, sadness, despair. These children are of course allowed to see their families in the safest way we can allow, but the nature of their quirks mean they'd be lucky to ever go outside again. The man continued. We have been looking for a solution to this issue, but have yet to find one. Until recently. Izuku thought about what that could mean, and what that had to do with him. And then, he figured it out. You want Iri's blood? Izuku realized. So you can use Overhaul's quirk erasing formula. We've been studying it since his arrest and subsequent death, but now I believe we can properly replicate it if we had more of that girl's blood. The man said. If we could replicate this serum, then we could inject this serum into those people, and allow them to finally live their lives freely. You'd also be making them quirkless, subjecting them years of discrimination and mistreatment, and doing that by harvesting blood from a traumatized little girl, Izuku said. All his nervousness vanished instantly, as he switched into protecting the children mode. We understand you've had a bad experience with being quirkless, however that is simply because you lived in an area with heavy amounts of quirk discrimination. The man said. Not all areas discriminate against quirklessness quite as badly, and that discrimination pales in comparison to spending the rest of your life in what is essentially being locked in a very comfortable prison. Izuku grits his teeth. As much as his mind screamed that being quirkless and a curse and doing it to others would be beyond cruel, the logical part of his brain told him that he was right and keeping them in those facilities would be even worse. But Iri would be donating blood. The man cut him off. Millions of people have and still do donate blood every day. It's completely fine so long as one does not get greedy as Overhaul did. Izuku winced. He didn't like this, he really didn't like this. But the man was making logical arguments. And as much as he disliked the idea of Iri's blood being taken again, he also hated the idea of just leaving those people stuck in the facilities to suffer. But I can't do that to Iri. She just got out of that situation. If I tell her they're gonna take her blood, she might go into a panic attack. Izuku thought hard about this situation. But I can't leave those people. You just think about it, you and that girl will be heroes to dozens of people. The man said, making sure to use the H word. Izuku glared at the man, before looking away to think about it some more. In the end, he couldn't make a decision. Because he decided it wasn't his decision to make. I will ask Iri about this, Izuku said. If she agrees, I will draw up a contract. Mr. Midoriya, the girl is only around 7 years old. The man said. You can't, it is her decision to make, Izuku said, adding more edge to his voice. I will not force my daughter to do what she is uncomfortable with. If she says she is okay with it, then I will call you. The man opened his mouth to argue, but Izuku cut him off. This is the best you are getting, Izuku said curtly. Now, if you don't mind, I would appreciate it if you would give me some time so I can talk to her, and let her think about the decision. Izuku knew they were trying to pressure him, he would not allow it. Because if he was pressured, then so would Iri. He and the man glared at each other, the agent testing to see if Izuku would lose his nerve. He didn't. After a few moments, the man got up. Well, then we will be eagerly awaiting your answer. Good day. The man left, leaving Izuku with a task he did not look forward to. Later, in Iri's room. Iri was currently on her bed, trying to figure out a mystery that had been plaguing her for over an hour. A Rubik's Cube. Kiba had bought the object, or rather she got Izuku to buy it for her, so she could solve it live on stream. However, Izuku was 100% sure Kiba would break more than a few of them, so he bought about a dozen, and much to his surprise Kiba only broke 5 before taking a break. Iri had gotten her hands on one of the spares and was having difficulty solving it. Knock knock. Iri? Izuku said. His voice was weak and filled with hesitation, something that immediately caused worry to stir inside Iri. Can I come in? Iri nodded, only to realize that Izuku couldn't see her nodding from outside. Why yes. Izuku opened the door and walked in, before carefully closing the door behind him. He looked at Iri, with a pained expression, that made Iri even more nervous. Are you okay? Iri asked him, fearfully. I'm fine. Izuku sighed. It's just ... Iri. You know what DOC does, right? Iri nodded. They take kids with dangerous quirks so other people won't get hurt. Basically yes. And those kids are either taken to me or their parents take care of them with the help of DOC, Izuku explained. But ... there are people with quirks that are too dangerous, and they have to be stuck in special places like Shuraku, Kai and the others. Except they have to be there forever. Iri's eyes widened. But ... they didn't like those places. Yes, that's the problem. If we make them stay there, then they'll be really, really sad. But if they don't stay where, they could hurt a lot of people. Izuku explained as simply as possible. So what do we do? Iri asked. Izuku took a deep breath and pulled all the willpower he had. Well, Iri ... they have a solution, but ... they want to take their quirks away ... and ... they need your blood. Izuku managed to say, even though it felt terrible. Iri's eyes widened in horror, and she instinctively backed away. The act of which broke Izuku's heart more than a little. You don't have to worry, Iri, no one is forcing you. Izuku quickly reassured her. No one will take your blood if you don't want them to. They won't? Iri asked fearfully, vague incomplete memories of Overhaul flashed in her vision. No. Let me explain this better, Izuku said. If you say yes, then let's say once a month, some people will come to take blood from you. First, they'll put you to sleep so you don't panic or feel any pain or fear. All you'll feel is a little soreness when you wake up. Then they'll take a needle and take a small amount of blood from you, and that's it. Then they'll leave. And that's it. They'll use that blood to make the quirk erasing serum so they can give it to people who have quirks that are too dangerous so they can live normal happy lives again. But if you say no, then no one will come. And you can keep doing whatever you've been doing. But then no one will be helped. The horror set in on the poor girl as she realized the weight of the choice in front of her. Either she did something she was insanely uncomfortable with, or she would have to lead an unknown, but presumably large, amount of people to suffer for the rest of their lives. The pressure ... was immense. And Izuku could sense it, and guilt weighed down on him heavily, as he watched the poor girl struggle to try and make a decision, getting overwhelmed by the consequences that could come from either choice. You don't need to make the choice now, Izuku said. Just ... think about. Maybe talk to your siblings about it. Oh okay, Iri said, thoroughly shaken. Izuku looked at her for a moment, before wrapping her in a hug. It's okay, no matter what decision you make, I'll always love you. And your siblings too. It took Iri a moment before she hugged back, tightly. After a few minutes, the two eventually separated. Do you want me to stay with you? Izuku asked her. To his surprise, Iri shook her head. I wanna talk to Kyaku, Iri said. Okay, but I'll be in my office if you need me. I have to work out how this is gonna work if you say yes or no, Izuku told her. But if you need anything at all, just talk to me. Iri nodded, and slowly, Izuku walked out of the room. and immediately started kicking himself. Metaphorically, stupid. Idiot. Worthless. Izuku berated himself. He felt like he was about to vomit. How could he put Eri through such a difficult and stressful choice? Especially after what she's been through. But at the same time, what else could he do? Was he supposed to force her? That would be terrible. After being forced to give blood to Overhaul and then this. She would never trust him again. And he couldn't just say no and condemn all those people to suffering. He physically could not bring himself to do that. But there had to be something he was missing. Some easy choice that didn't involve hurting his little girl. He was just too stupid to see it. Izuku hit his head against the wall in frustration, trying to release pent-up frustration. Why her? Why out of all the children did it have to be her? Because the truth is, the agent was right, donating blood wasn't a huge deal, people did it all the time. It's just that it was Eri donating blood. I'd be like taking someone who was almost stabbed to death to a knife museum. Izuku sighed, continuing his depressing walk towards his office. Now it was out of his hands. He would have to wait for Eri to make her decision. Hopefully, her siblings could help alleviate the stress of that choice. Hopefully. So what do you think of this decision? What choice should Eri make? Go through something that causes her extreme amounts of discomfort and fear as well as bringing up old trauma, or let dozens of people suffer? Now I know if you want to be objective about it, making Eri give the blood would be the right choice. Especially since Izuku's going to make sure she's not even awake for the process, but for both Izuku and Eri this is stressful. For Eri, she'd have to face old trauma she wasn't prepared to face yet, and for Izuku he'd have to let it happen, after he made all those promises and told her that she'd be safe and she would never have to worry again. It's not a fun situation to be in. Chapter 31. Okay, wow. I got some interesting reviews last chapter. Most of you paid no mind to the actual dilemma that was presented in the story, in favor of paying attention to outside factors and trying to find easy ways out. So let's address that, shall we? The first and most prominent thing I heard was the government is bad and will try to make the quirk erasing formula a weapon. The government weaponizing things they shouldn't is literally one of the most common plot points in fiction. And the formula was made to be a weapon in the first place. Of course, I thought about that. And of course, Izuku thought about it too. I was going to address that this chapter, but I didn't expect everyone and their mother to talk about it in the reviews. Have a little faith that Izuku's thinking up ways to keep that from happening. Also, even if that was the case, and the government did make weapons out of those bullets, would it be worth it to just leave those people in captivity forever just so the government can't use the bullets against villains? Because that's what it would be used for. For whatever reason people were talking about the government using this against the heroes. The heroes work for them. This isn't a comic book where the government is always trying to pull one over on the heroes or control them. The heroes work for the government, directly. That's like worrying about the government developing new weapons to use against the police or the army. It makes no sense. And this isn't some dystopian future where government blatantly murder their own men for the slightest advantage. Also, let's address the third options. Many people suggested or guessed other options outside the ones that were provided. Now let me point out the issues with those solutions. For one, many people suggested that Eri refuse for now and go through therapy to properly get over her trauma before doing something like this. Which is not a terrible answer, except you forgot one thing. You know how when you procrastinate something important, and it stays in the back of your head, bothering more and more until you eventually do it? For Eri, it's gonna be that times 1,000. Every day Eri is going to remember those people still waiting for her to help them. And it will drive her nuts. If anything, putting this off would likely do more damage to her mental health than saying either no or yes. And another alternative option is for Eri to say no and Izuku to adopt them. Perhaps I wasn't clear in the last chapter, so allow me to put it as clearly as possible. These kids are unadoptable. The reason they are classified as level 2 OPCs is because they can't be safely integrated into society, under any current means. Sure, they can be contained and in theory, could exist alongside everyone else, but if things go south everyone is screwed. Let's put Sansan for example. Sansan's safety precaution is the special chemical that renders her acid harmless. If something goes wrong and she stays in her acid form, then while it will cause a lot of property damage, it's unlikely people will die unless there is either extreme incompetence, carelessness, or maliciousness involved. With a level 2 OPC, not the case. If something goes wrong with their safety precaution, everyone around them dies. Even if Izuku was stupid enough and suicidal enough to want to take them in, he is literally not allowed to do so. It's not an option. No. There is no third option, not a good one anyway. The trope of the character making their own option can be one of two things. Either it is a show of the character's intelligence and how they can change the situation with methods not previously thought of. Or, more commonly, it's a cop-out where the character pulls something out of nowhere or does something they couldn't before because the plot says they need to. There will be no cop-outs here. Eri will, unfortunately, have to make a difficult choice with no easy option or a way out. Now, let's see how that plays out, shall we? The game room. You need to stop breaking these controllers. Kyaku told her vampiric opponent. It's not my fault these cursed controls cannot handle my might. Kiba shouted in frustration after breaking yet another controller. Don't you have a special controller that's super strong? Kyaku asked her skeptically. Why yes, but it's all the way upstairs, Kiba said, making a quick excuse. Queen of laziness. Kyaku said. Kiba was about to retort, but then Eri came running and hugged Kyaku. Clearly distressed. Eri? Kyaku asked, quickly returning the hug in an attempt to comfort her sister. What's wrong? Eri looked at her with pleading puppy dog eyes, that instantly made Kyaku melt from cuteness but also made her concerned. See, can we go to your room? How could she ever say no? Kyaku's room. The two of them sat on Kyaku's bed, and after they got comfortable, Eri explained the situation. No. Kyaku hugged Eri protectively. You can't let them. They might try to use your blood as a weapon, to hurt people. Eri's eyes widened. Like overhaul? Kyaku nodded. Like overhaul. But Izuku said they were going to help people. Eri pointed out. They probably lied to him. Kyaku accused. Daddy is too nice. They must have said he can help people to trick him into letting them have your blood. Kyaku loved her father, she loved him dearly. But she knew he could be too kind, he believed people too much. That's why she had to be vigilant. And protect her family from liars. I'll go talk to Daddy. I have to warn him. Kyaku jumped off the bed and ran out the door, intent on finding Izuku. This left Eri with time to think about what Kyaku told her. She hadn't thought about it, but they might be lying to trick Izuku so they could use her blood as a weapon. Like Overhaul did. In all the cartoons and movies, they showed the government being bad people, so it made sense. But Izuku told her those things on TV were very different from real life, and Kyaku was often called paranoid by everyone else. Even if the government were completely trustworthy, Kyaku probably still wouldn't trust them. So maybe, even though she really liked Kyaku, she wasn't the right person to ask. But, then who was? Maybe maybe someone who had been with DOC Fukunoko's room. Fukunoko was sewing up a hole that had been made in her skirt when there was a gentle knock on her door. Despite the gentleness of the knock, Fukunoko still flinched. Who's there? It's Eri, Eri answered. See, can I come in? Please. Fuko debated internally. On one hand, she didn't want people in her room. On the other hand, it was Eri. Are you upset with me? Fuku asked. And no. You don't have to let me in. I don't wanna bother you. Eri said sadly. Fuku was immediately stabbed with guilt and ran over to the door. No, you can come in. See, I'm opening the door right now. Fuku opened the door and was immediately met with a distressed Iri, causing her to panic even more. Oh no, I made her so upset. She probably won't want to be friends anymore. And oh my god, I wasn't thinking, I let her into my room. Stupid Fuku, what did you do? Fuku berated herself. Fuku? Iri said, getting the attention of her zoned-out friend. Are you okay? Fuku snapped out of her thoughts and looked at Iri, trying to see if she was angry or upset with her, but she wasn't, at least not in any visible way. Normally that wouldn't get her to lower her guard, but she reminded herself that this was Iri. So she convinced herself to lower her guard just a little, tiny bit. Did you want something? Fuku asked. One explanation later. Oh, Iri ... I don't know which one to pick. Fuku answered honestly. I wouldn't want anyone near my body like that, but ... those buildings that the government has ... I don't want to go back to them. Iri frowned. Was it bad? It ... they didn't hurt me, but I was ... lonely, Fuku admitted. No one visited me like you and do. The only people that came were the men in suits, but they were like robots, and I think they hated me. It was better than being with ... that bad man ... but I like here a lot better. A lot better. Iri thought about that. She was glad that those people weren't being hurt ... at least not physically, but ... she knew just as well as many of these kids did. Loneliness can hurt a lot. Flashes of her time with Overhaul popped up in her head. This time they weren't of her time in the chair. It was her time in her room. Just sitting there in deafening silence, completely and utterly miserable. And then she imagined someone else in the position. Someone who had done nothing wrong and whose only crime was being born with a bad quirk. It horrified her. Iri? Fuku gave Iri a concerned look as her friend started to panic. Iri, what's wrong? Iri snapped out of her thoughts and had noticed she was breathing a bit too much. After a few moments to calm herself, she responded. And nothing. It doesn't look like nothing. Fuku pointed out. Iri ... I don't want those people to touch you. I'm not sure you should say yes. Iri looked down. She wanted a more definite answer. Because she herself was so unsure. Sensing this, Fuku suggested something. Why don't you ask? She might know. Iri thought. Was one of Iri's closest friends. The second child Izuku adopted, and her first sister. Maybe she had the answers that Iri didn't. The library was currently reading a book called Animorphs when Iri walked in. Iri called out to her sister. Iri immediately put down her book and rapidly patted the seat next to her. Come here. Come here. Iri did as instructed, walking over and climbing up on the seat next to the snake girl. Promptly wrapped Iri in a tight hug. I missed you. Why, you saw me this morning. Iri quietly pointed out. That's too Loon complained. Proceeded to cuddle Iri, and Iri found herself petting the snakes in her hair to calm herself. Eventually, noticed that Iri was upset, however, and momentarily stopped the cuddling. What's wrong? Iri bit her lip and explained. Another explanation later. I would do it, said after hearing her out. You would? Iri asked. If people need help, then you should help them, stated simply. That's what Izuku thinks. And if he didn't think that, we would all still be sad and in danger. That statement crashed into Iri's mind, as she realized just how true that statement was. Izuku had to make hard decisions a lot too. Izuku was probably super scared when she knocked on his door and asked him to help her hide from a criminal. But he did it, and, with practically no hesitation. He was probably scared when that villain was robbing the supermarket using, but he didn't run or hide, he saved her. Izuku always tried to help people, even if he was scared, even if something bad might happen to him. And because of that, she was here. Because of that, they were all here. Because of that, they were a family. Iri felt like she wanted to do the same thing, that she should do the same thing. But you don't have to if you don't wanna, said, tightening the hug once more. I don't wanna ever make you sad. Don't do something that will make you sad. Well, that was a conflicting statement. Did she want Eri to do it or not? Right now she was thinking that she should do it. But what Kyaku said earlier about them maybe using them as weapons, and her own fear of having her blood taken were still making her indecisive. Maybe she should ask someone smart about this. Other than Izuku, he was busy, and she didn't want to bother him any more than she did. So who was the other smartest person here? Kitchen. Fu and Yami were busy munching down on meats when Eri came up to their table. Fu? Eri asked. Fu paused for a moment, before finishing up the slab of meat as fast as he could. Once he was done, he turned to Eri. Whacked? Huck? Ate. Fu shoved his hand down his throat in a way that looked extremely uncomfortable, and after a few moments, he grabbed the piece of meat that had gotten stuck in his throat, before putting it back in his mouth, chewing and swallowing it properly. Do you need something, Eri? Fu asked. Something's wrong, Yami said after eating his own slab of meat. Lots of bad feelings. Did those men do something? Lots of bad feelings everywhere after they left. Eri paused for a moment. She wasn't going to get Yami involved at first, but since he knew something was wrong, she might as well tell him too, if only to keep him from worrying. Yet another explanation later. Fu said. That's hard. Yami nodded in agreement. Yeah, hard. What should I do? Eri asked. Well, I don't think I can tell you what to do. Fu said. I give blood all the time, but I don't feel pain or fear. So it's all different for me. It's probably different for everyone. Eri immediately looked disappointed. You're the one making the choice, Fu said. So which do you feel worse about? Not helping those people or getting your blood drained? Eri thought about it. She hated both options. But which one did she hate the least? It was so hard. Both options caused her immense amounts of fear, stress, anger, and just every negative emotion known to man. She couldn't tell which one she hated more. Luckily, someone could. Think about first option, Yami told her. Huh? Eri asked. Think about first option, Yami repeated. You mean not helping them? Fu asked, receiving a nod from Yami. Eri didn't know where this was going, but she followed the instruction anyway, mostly because she was slightly scared of annoying Yami. She thought about all these people, stuck in a room, all alone, never going outside, never getting to do all the good things in the world, like go to an amusement park, and they would be like this, forever. Many emotions flowed through her. Guilt and self-hatred at the thought of her own selfishness being in the way of these people's happiness, as well as fear and sadness at the thought that they would be stuck there forever. After a few seconds, Yami spoke again. Now think about the other one. You mean giving them her blood? Fu asked to clarify, receiving another nod. Eri thought about it. She thought of being in that chair again. Izuku reassured her it wouldn't be like with Overhaul, but all she could think of was that chair, and the brief memory of Overhaul coming towards her, before the memories ended because Kyaku erased them. She couldn't remember being taken apart. But she could remember the fear of it, the fear she had felt every day until Izuku saved her. The fear she felt now wasn't new, it was an old fear, one that was put aside but never away. An old fear that now exploded out and made her want to cower and hide. Second option. Give blood. Yami said. Huh? Eri was taken off guard by this sudden answer. The first one feels worse, Yami said. The second one isn't as bad. As Eri was looking at him in confusion, Fu figured out what Yami meant. Yami can see emotions, Fu explained. So he told you to think of both options to see which one made you feel worse. And apparently giving blood doesn't make you feel as bad. It doesn't? Eri asked, a little wide-eyed. First one feels worse, second one not as bad. Do the second one, give blood. Yami said. That actually made Iri feel a little better. It made her choice, which had been tearing at her all day, a little easier. The only thing keeping her from helping those people were her own feelings. But, if she was just going to feel worse if she didn't help them anyway, then the choice was obvious. However, making the choice easier didn't make it easy. Her fear was still gnawing at her, and grabbing her as if it was trying to keep her in place. She wanted to go make the decision, she wanted to help. She knows she should help. And she knew that not helping wouldn't be good for her either. But even after all this time, fear was still trying to hold her back. "You're a good person, Iri," Fu said, gaining everyone's attention. "You want to help people so much that not helping people makes you feel worse than something you're afraid of. That means you're brave and selfless, just like Izuku." "Like Izuku?" Iri asked, small tears welling in her eyes. Fu nodded. "You want to be a doctor, right? So those people are your first patients. I think you may be the youngest doctor ever." Iri stayed quiet, silently being reassured by Fu's words, which was exactly the boy's intention. "Izuku told me and Kiba that to be heroes and to save people, we have to overcome our fears. And you're doing that right now. So you're like a hero doctor." Fu knew Iri must be going through a lot with this choice, so he had to say everything he could to help her. "A hero doctor," Iri whispered. Yami looked at Iri as the immense feeling of negativity was somewhat mitigated by Fu's reassurance. It was still an overwhelming amount of negativity, but Fu seemed to be helping a tiny bit. "Yeah, a hero doctor. You're really good," Yami said in an attempt to help. Iri seemed stuck there, unable to move as all sorts of emotions overwhelmed her. Fu hopped down from the chair and took Iri's hand. "Why don't we tell Izuku about your decision?" Iri gave a hesitant nod, and Fu took her by the hand and guided her to Izuku's office. "Izuku's office?" "Yes, and under no circumstances do I want them to weaponize this," Izuku said to his newly hired lawyers. And knock knock knock. "Hold on a second please," Izuku said. "Come in." Fu walked in with Iri in tow. "Izuku?" Iri has her answer. "Really?" Izuku hadn't expected it to come this fast. Although why is Fu with her? Did he see how panicked she was and try to help? Well it's Fu, so I doubt he would try to pressure her into anything. That's more Kyoku's thing. Izuku sighed, remembering how long it took for him to convince Kyoko that he wasn't letting them do anything bad to Iri. Because you better believe he had plans to stop and scheming the government may be doing. Not that it would matter if Iri said no. Fu brought Iri over to Izuku's desk and then stood behind her. "Go on, you can do it." Iri looked at Izuku, fear and hesitation still very clear on her face, and if Izuku looked close enough he could see that she was slightly trembling. Will they use my blood tea to hurt people? Iri asked. Before she could say yes, she had to know the answer to this. Izuku rubbed her head reassuringly. "I would never let them do that. Ever." The definitiveness in Izuku's voice helped Iri make her choice. "Then I want to help," Iri managed to say, her trembling increasing, and she shut her eyes as tears started coming down her cheeks. "Please let me help." Not even a second later, Izuku was embracing her. "My brave little girl. I'm so proud of you." Iri took in the praise, letting it comfort her as the finality of her choice set in, and images of the chair pledged her mind. It's okay. Everything's going to be okay," Izuku reassured her. Fu joined in muttering comforting words, and the trio stayed like this for a long time, until Iri eventually ran out of energy. I'm tired. Iri sniffled. "That's okay Iri, you just go rest," Izuku told her. "Fu, bring her to her room. And make sure she's not alone." Fu nodded, lifting up Iri and walking out of his office. Once they left, Izuku sat back in his chair and leaned back, releasing a breath he had been holding. It had been an emotional moment for him too, and many of those emotions lingered inside of him. Fear, worry, sadness, self-hate, and pride. Pride in his daughter's selflessness. Izuku saw his phone and immediately remembered what he had been doing beforehand and picked it up as fast as he could. "I'm so sorry that took so long," Izuku apologized. "Let's get back to discussing the contract." 2 days later, the men from DOC once again walked into his office, with the lead man taking a seat in front of Izuku. "You said you had an answer?" the man asked. "Yes, we will be handing over the blood," Izuku said, much to the men's elation. "However, I have many stipulations." Izuku pulled out a thick contract from a drawer in his desk and laid on the table in front of them. "These are my terms, there will be no exceptions. Read them, and either you agree to them, or you don't get the blood," Izuku said firmly, making the men nervous. The lead agent spent half an hour reading the contract and learned just how right he was to be nervous. In short, the terms were as such. Under no circumstance could the formula be used outside the purpose of getting rid of the quirks of level 2 OPCs. And they could not be weaponized at all. The requirements of using the formula is as such. They must have the approval of all legal guardians, and the person themselves. The person must be at least 10 years old and be made fully aware of the consequences and after effects of this decision. Then they must submit a form to Izuku or a person of Izuku's choosing, that he or a person of his choosing must approve. Any and all things involving Irie's blood Izuku should be made aware of, and he had the right to check on any and all things involving her blood. DOC would not be directly involved with the extraction of or handling of blood, and that duty would instead fall to another branch of the government. Basically, this would give Izuku full control over everything that happened involving this project. We can't accept this," the man said. "Well, then you're not getting her blood." Izuku knew exactly what position he was in. Irie's blood was an irreplaceable ingredient for the quirk erasing formula. And he had a full monopoly over it. Those kids that DOC holding would cost them absurd amounts of money to contain for the rest of their lives, and so if they could just get rid of their quirks, then they'd stand to save a crap ton of money. But to do that, they needed Irie. Izuku had all the power here. So he could afford to make unreasonable demands. So long as the government stood to gain all that money from it, they'd be stupid to refuse. That, and also I wonder how the public would feel about you refusing my terms though, Izuku said out loud, causing the men to panic. Because honestly, the reason you wouldn't be able to agree with them is if you had some kind of ulterior motive. And I wonder how the people would react to that ulterior motive getting in the way of helping people in need. Izuku had not signed any non-disclosure agreements, meaning at any point in time he could talk about everything that was going on here, and if something happened that he didn't like, it wouldn't be too hard to bring the hammer of bad public opinion down on the government for this. The man grit his teeth, and looked over the contract again, before looking back at Izuku. "Let us talk to our superiors." Izuku nodded, and the men walked out of the room and pulled out their phones. He waited, and waited, and waited for a while more, and after a lengthy amount of time, they came back in. "Maybe we can negotiate these terms," the lead agent said. "Perhaps some compensation can be given." "I don't want any money," Izuku interrupted him. "I will say this one last time, if I have to say it again, then we're finished here. These are my terms. Either sign the contract or leave." The man paused before saying, "I need to talk with my superiors again." "Tell your superiors that I don't have all day," Izuku said impatiently. The three men left the room once more, and Izuku took that moment to lean back in his chair and relax for a moment. It was exhausting to act so aggressive and rude. It just wasn't in his nature. But he needed to act like this. He had to remember that he had the power here, and use that power to pressure them. Otherwise, there would be dire consequences. He looked at a picture of himself and Irie making apple pie. He had to remember why he did this, who he was doing this for. Even if it doubled his workload, it would be worth it. When he heard the door open, he immediately straightened up, and the men walked back in, with resigned looks on their faces. "We'll need some time to spread this around and get all the proper signatures, but we plan on agreeing to your terms," the main agent said. Izuku smiled but did his best to hide his relief and excitement. "That's great. I'll let you take this copy of the contract so you can make copies and you can contact me when everything is signed." "Of course." The man all but sighed. As the men took the contract and left, Izuku silently celebrated his success in his office. "I need some tea," he thought. A week later, Eri sat anxiously in her bed. Today was the date of the blood donation. Izuku decided it should be as soon as possible so Eri didn't have to suffer the suspense forever. There were some doctors there with some machines, and a mask connected to a tube that they would use to put her to sleep. Izuku was also present, kneeling down next to Eri and holding her hand to comfort her. "It's okay, everything's going to be okay. I'm so proud of you, you're so brave. You're going to help so many people. Alright, now we just need her to lay down and we can start," said one of the doctors. Izuku gave her the most reassuring smile he could muster. "Just lie down, Eri. When you wake up, it will all be over." "Okay," Eri muttered quietly. She laid down, and the doctors descended upon her. As fear grew inside her, she comforted herself by squeezing Izuku's hands tighter. As the mask came down on her face she quickly went to sleep. The last words she heard were, "One day, you'll do this without any fear at all." And then everything went black. When Eri opened her eyes, she was back in the chair. The same chair Overhaul had put her in so many times before. In the exact same Yakuza base, she hoped to never see again. Panic and fear flooded her body, as her brain immediately told her to run. But she couldn't move. No matter how much she tried, her body wouldn't budge. Then, she heard footsteps. Footsteps coming from outside the room, walking towards her. Fear grew in her as the footsteps grew closer and closer and tears started to drip from her eyes each second her body refused to move. Then, the door opened. But who walked in wasn't Overhaul. It was her. It was Eri. Just as she had been before Izuku found her. In that plain dress, with her old bandages. The doppelganger walked closer to her, staring at her intently. "Why are we here again?" asked the doppelganger. Eri didn't answer, she was too confused, too scared. "Why did you let them hurt us again?" the doppelganger asked. Eri felt like she wanted to answer. She wanted to say that they weren't going to hurt her. That she would be fine. But the words died in her throat. However, the doppelganger seemed to read Eri's mind. And knew what she wanted to say. "They're taking your blood, Eri. They're doing what Overhaul did. They're gonna take you apart again. And no." Eri spoke for the first time. "No, they won't." Eri suddenly blinked, and the doppelganger transformed. She now had on Overhaul's mask and jacket. "Why do you think you can help people?" As the doppelganger spoke, Eri could hear Overhaul's voice speak with her, as if she and Overhaul were speaking at the same time. "You know your quirk is a curse." "No, it's not," Eri denied. Izuku said. "Izuku's not here, you weak pathetic girl." The doppelganger started to turn more monstrous. The bandages flew off revealing scars and cuts underneath, all bleeding out on the floor, and bird-like feathers started to grow on her until she was nothing but a freak abomination of herself and Overhaul combined. "But I'm here. I'm always here. You can't escape me, Eri. You're mine. Always mine. Forever." Eri screamed as the nightmare opened its huge bird beak and swallowed her whole. Now, Eri was floating in darkness. Alone, and scared. She couldn't see a thing. "Izuku. Izuku." Eri called out into the darkness. "Why can't you do anything on your own?" Suddenly the bird monster appeared in front of her, its beak and eyes popping out of the darkness, still using her and Overhaul's voice. "You worthless girl. Why can't you help yourself? Iri started sobbing, as the nightmare kept berating her. Please. Help. She cried. And then, there was a light. A light pierced through the darkness, and a figure reached out of the light and grabbed onto Iri. Shush, it's okay. It can't hurt you anymore. The light died down a bit, and the figure was revealed to be what looked like an older-looking Iri. She was wearing stereotypical doctor attire, but the oddest part was that her hair and eyes were green, and she was still faintly glowing. You don't have to be afraid of them, she said. Her voice, much like the nightmares, was a combination of her own voice and someone else's, in this case, that being Izuku's. The dream Iri took Iri into her embrace, and Iri clung to this strange vision of her future self. She could feel her hand, it was warm, like Izuku's. You can't be saved, Iri. You're mine. The nightmare repeated words Overhaul had more or less said to her over and over, its darkness surrounding the two of them, enriching upon them. The dream Iri glared at the nightmare, and as the darkness threatened to engulf them, the dream Iri's glow brightened and destroyed the darkness. The nightmare screamed in pain. You're a liar. You've always been a liar. The dream Iri said. Your lies and mean words can't hurt anyone anymore. Iri's too strong. She's a strong, brave girl now. The dream Iri looked down at regular Iri. Iri, it's time to get rid of them now. Suddenly, the dream Iri's light started to spread onto Iri, until she was now glowing with light. No. No. The nightmare sent out more darkness to attack the two of them. The dream gave Iri a gentle smile that reminded her of Izuku. Hold out your hand, Iri. They're waiting for you. Iri looked at the darkness, and then at the dream, before hesitantly, she and the dream held out their hands to stop the darkness. And then, all she saw was light. Back in the real world, Iri opened her eyes and was met with several blurry figures as her eyes tried to adjust to the light. I think she's waking up, shouted a loud female voice. Don't be too loud, scolded another feminine voice. Is she okay? Said a male voice that was further away. When Iri's eyes refocused, she saw that she was surrounded by her siblings and Izuku. Almost everyone was here, most of her siblings, and Izuku were right up next to her bed. Atoko kept a good distance, being in the back of the room, and Kai was outside the window. The only one who wasn't here was Fukinoko, which made sense considering she couldn't bear to be around one other person, let alone 11. Iri was about to ask what everyone was doing here when she felt a small pain in her arm. She quickly looked at her arm and saw that there was a bandage on her arm. It's over, Iri, Izuku told her. It's done. They took the blood. Iri's eyes widened in disbelief. That was it? That was all? She went to sleep and woke up, and the worst thing she had to endure was a slight soreness? Izuku had told her as much, so she shouldn't be surprised, but this was nothing. She felt more pain than this when she stubbed her toe. Overhaul's blood taking was 1,000 times worse. If it was this easy, then did he just hurt her because he hated her that much? Given what she knew of Overhaul, she figured the answer to that was yes. At last you have awoken. We were quite worried about you. Caretaker said that he didn't want you alone when you woke up. So we all arrived here to greet you. Kiba said. Are you okay, Iri? Kai asked, engulfing her in a hug. Hey, I wanna hug her too. Kyoku said, going up and hugging Iri as well. Don't think you can get ahead of me. Kiba said, crawling over her siblings to hug Iri. Hey. Don't overwhelm her. Izuku said, but with no effect. As Iri was being swarmed by her siblings, she felt as if any other time she would have been overwhelmed. But now, after the donation, she was just glad she didn't wake up alone again. Happy tears streamed down her cheeks, as she realized that things were well and truly different. Meanwhile, Yami watched Iri closely, as for once the positive emotions overwhelmed the negative ones. He knew he did his job well. Later that night, given that Iri had slept for a good portion of the day, Izuku let her stay up later than normal. She had been spending that time watching TV when suddenly she got a knock on the door. Iri paused what she was watching, and walked to the door. When she opened it, to her surprise, there was an entire tray of fresh chocolate chip cookies just sitting there, with a note next to it. She looked around for anyone who could have left it, and saw that Fukinoko was looking at her from behind one of the corners, only to flee when she realized she'd been spotted. She left her room? Iri thought in surprise. Once she got over the fact that the famed recluse left her room for once, she looked down at the cookies and the note. In the note, written in very neat handwriting, was as such. "I'm sorry I didn't come with everyone. I promise I care about you. I was just scared. Take the cookies. Please keep being my friend." Iri looked at the note, and then at the cookies. Slowly, she took one of the cookies and bit into it. "It's good," Iri thought. Iri looked at the rest of the cookies. Part of her wanted to finish the rest of them off. But she had a better idea. At Fukinoko's room. Fuka was sitting in her room, hoping beyond hope that Iri accepted the cookies and would still be friends with her. Oh my god, what if she hates the cookies? Stupid Fuku, you should have thought of something better. Fuku berated herself. Knock knock. Yap. Fuku jumped. "Fuku? Can I come in?" Iri asked. "Please." Are you mad?" Fuku asked. Fuku asked. "No. I'm happy," Iri said. "Why you are?" Fuku asked. "Yes," Iri said. Fuku hesitated for a bit, before ultimately deciding to open the door. On the other side, was Iri, with the plate of cookies. "I wanted to share," Iri said. Share?" Fuku repeated in shock. Iri nodded. "The cookies are good. But food is better when you eat with someone else." "And me?" Fuku said, as there was anyone else here. "You want to eat with me?" Iri nodded again. "You're my friend." And just like that, the two of them spent the rest of the night, staying up way past their bedtimes, eating sugar and watching TV together. Neither of them could have asked for more.